Chapter 1192, A Knife to Me, a Knife to You. The altar had been specially crafted by a method known only to the otherworldly demonic tribe, and it required the Junchi of slaughter to activate. More importantly, it concerned a secret of the soul oracles, so how could a master teacher possibly be able to activate it? The Qingtian emperor felt as if he was going insane. Others might not have known how fearsome the altar was, but he did. Once it was activated, it could draw even the primordial spirit of a leaving aperture realm expert into it easily. TZZZZZZZZ. Before the Qingtian emperor could even give any further thought to the situation he was in, he suddenly felt the suction force growing stronger and stronger. Despite his resistance, his soul was slowly dragged by the suction force, seemingly about to be taken over to the other side at any moment. You are courting death. Frightened and alarmed, the Qingtian emperor bellowed furiously. At this point, he was fully aware that he had fallen for the young man's schemes. He swiftly extended his soul energy toward the will floating in the air, wanting to grab and destroy it. However, the will seemed to be completely unaffected by the suction of the altar. It leisurely made its way back into the soulless golden body. Not expecting the other party to escape from his grasp, the Qingtian emperor's rage crescendoed. Humph! I am the creator of the soulless metal humanoid. It takes nothing more than a mere thought for me to claim your life. With a furious roar, the Qingtian emperor swiftly sealed the pores of the soulless metal humanoid, preventing the young man's soul from escaping it. After which, he sent the energy harnessed within the metal humanoid into chaos, putting it on the verge of explosion. As the creator of the soulless metal humanoid, he was able to have it explode at his whim. This was the exact same method that Zhongxian had used to subdue the Jade Leaf King back then. There's no need for you to go through so much trouble, said Zhongxian nonchalantly. Following which, with a resounding pooh-ha, the soulless metal humanoid was abruptly ripped in two down the middle. A massive 10-meter-tall soul appeared from within the body. It should have been impossible for any soul to escape once the pores of the soulless metal humanoid were sealed. However, by abruptly enlarging his soul by undoing the heavenly art of dimension unravel, Zhongxian managed to tear the metal humanoid in two. Seeing Zhongxian decisively tearing the soulless metal humanoid in two, the Qingtian emperor widened his eyes in astonishment. This is your soul? How is it so big? As a soul oracle, he understood the significance of the size of a soul, and the one before him was actually 10 meters large. Just how much soul energy could that 10 meters large soul possibly contain? This is impossible. No, wait a moment. You are a soul oracle? Realization suddenly struck the Qingtian emperor as his mouth widened in shock. Only a soul oracle could possibly possess such an enormous soul, but wasn't the other party a master teacher? How could a master teacher possibly be a soul oracle? The Qingtian emperor felt as if his mind was going to blow from the insanity unfolding before his eyes. It had been countless years since the heritage of the soul oracles had disappeared from the face of the world. He had needed to pay a heavy price before he managed to lay his hands on a couple of soul arts, but who would have thought a master teacher as talented as the other party would actually be a full-fledged soul oracle? This was truly a shocker. Don't worry, I'm not going to do anything much. Watching as the Qingtian emperor went into a frenzy from the situation, Zhongxian consoled him insincerely as he slowly made his way over to the other party's immobile body. With a thought, his soul swiftly shrunk back to the size of a human before diving into the glabella of the immobile body. What are you trying to do? This sight immediately sent the Qingtian emperor into a panic. That was his body. If the other party were to possess his body, his soul would have nowhere else to go. What am I doing? Like I told you, I am not doing anything much. Didn't you teach me how to utilize a soulless metal humanoid earlier? I'm just trying to see if it will work on your body since the soulless metal humanoid you gave me earlier has exploded. As Zhongxian spoke, his soul successfully entered the Qingtian emperor's body. A moment later, the eyes of the immobile body opened, and it began stretching its neck lazily. Not bad. Feels much better than the soulless metal humanoid. The Qingtian emperor smiled in delight before casually waving his hand at the soul on the altar. Boom! Killing intent burst into the surroundings as immense might poured forth like the relentless rapid tides of a river. Feeling the strength harnessed within the body, Zhongxian could not help but remark, how powerful. Even though he had roughly 20 otherworldly demon puppets in his storage ring, they came nowhere close to competing with the one he was currently possessing. To make an analogy, if the strength of the otherworldly demon puppets was only a little pond, the body he was currently possessing would be an endless sea. The Qingtian Emperor felt as if he would explode from rage. He was an emperor of the otherworldly demonic tribe, but not only did he fall for the ploys of a mere human, more importantly, the latter even used his own body to attack his soul. Be it his body or his soul, he could not afford to have either of them injured. Damn it! Knowing that he would die if he did not protect himself, the Qingtian Emperor swiftly gathered his soul energy together and formed a devastating force that clashed with Zhongxian's slap. Boom! The collision ended with the physical body that Zhongxian controlled consecutively retreating 8 steps. He's a true leaving aperture realm expert. Zhongxian's face darkened. He had thought that the Qingtian Emperor would be at quasi-leaving aperture realm as well, the same as Hall Master Xing and Pavilion Master Go, but who knew that he would be a true leaving aperture realm expert, one who had undergone the lightning ordeal. The souls of soul oracles were of the yin attribute, making it more difficult for them to clear the lightning ordeal compared to ordinary primordial spirits. The fact that the Qingtian Emperor had been able to succeed went to show that he possessed exceptional talent in cultivation. Come out of my body. Ignoring Zhongxian's shock, the Qingtian Emperor's soul rushed forward and launched another wave of attacks. In an instant, Zhongxian felt the air freezing around him, making it difficult for him to move. This was a method similar to what he had faced from Pavilion Master Go during the pavilion crashing a few days earlier, but its might was several times stronger. If Pavilion Master Go had been able to draw forth such strength as well, he would have admitted defeat on the spot, thus resulting in the failure of his pavilion crashing. After his body was bound in place, Zhongxian quickly felt a powerful suction force tugging at his soul, attempting to forcefully pull his soul out from the body. Calm down, calm down. I'll come out, all right? Knowing that the Qingtian Emperor would not rest until his soul was out of the other party's body, Zhongxian shook his head. He quickly raised his fist and struck his own chest forcefully. Peng! Zhongxian was knocked back from the sheer impact of that strike, and a mouthful of crimson blood spewed from his mouth. That single strike had nearly killed the body on the spot. The Qingtian Emperor roared furiously. Can you get any more shameless than that? That's my body. Peng. Flustered, the Qingtian Emperor watched helplessly as the other party sank another palm into his body. Pu. More fresh blood spurted into the air. Stop it, stop it. Tightly bound by the altar, the Qingtian Emperor's soul was unable to break free and protect his body at all. Completely powerless, he could only shout again and again. At this rate, his body might really be utterly destroyed from the young man's self-harming. Even if he survived the ordeal, his cultivation would surely suffer a sharp decline. You stop first, and then I'll stop. Ignoring the Qingtian Emperor's bellows, Zhongxian continued striking his body relentlessly. Fine, fine, I'll stop. With a look dyed with hatred, the Qingtian Emperor gritted his teeth as he reluctantly retracted his hand. He had no choice but to stop, or else the young man might just destroy his body for good. If so, it would be meaningless even if he managed to force the other party out of his body. Boom. However, right after he retracted his control over the surrounding space, freeing the young man to move as he pleased, the Qingtian Emperor suddenly saw a palm enlarging swiftly before him. It seemed like the other party had no intention of stopping even when he did. You at %. The Qingtian Emperor cursed frenziedly. When had he, the emperor of the Qingtian lineage, ever suffered such grievances? There was no way out of this situation at all. The other party would kill his body if he made a move, but if he did not make a move, the other party would continue attacking his soul. He was doomed no matter what he did. Stop. I'm telling you to stop. The Qingtian Emperor howled furiously as he gathered his soul energy once more to fend off the young man's offense. However, before the palm strike could reach him, the young man abruptly changed the trajectory of the palm strike to hit himself instead. Pu. The strike was far more vicious this time around. Fresh blood spurted wildly all over the place, a sign that the organs of the body might have sustained irreparable damage. Panicked, the Qingtian emperor quickly withdrew his strength to appease the young man, only to see the other party sending yet another palm strike toward him. Unable to retaliate, the Qingtian emperor felt his soul gradually growing weaker and weaker. To think that he, a leaving aperture realm expert and one of the very few soul oracles existing in the world, would be cornered by a Saint Tudan brat to this extent. He really felt his sanity being challenged. How can there be such a shameless person in the world? Aren't you a master teacher? Shouldn't master teachers be righteous and honest? How could you possess my body and hold it hostage as you attack my soul? This is unfair. Really, really unfair. How am I supposed to fight against that? I can't let this continue. At this rate, either my soul will dissipate, or my body will be crippled. The Qingtian emperor thought grimly. Admittedly, the young man's underhanded measures were truly effective. By holding his body hostage, there was no way he would dare make a move against the young man, thus allowing the young man to freely attack his soul. The Qingtian emperor racked his mind for a solution to get him out of the quandary he was in, but nothing came to mind. Eventually, as his soul gradually sustained more and more damage, he lost the strength to withstand the suction force from the altar, and he disappeared into the altar. Watching as the other party was absorbed into the other side of the altar, Zhongxian's eyes suddenly widened in alarm. T. He suddenly realized that he had made a mistake. He had used the suction force of the altar to limit the Qingtian emperor's movements, but he had neglected the fact that his physical body was still lying on the other side. If the Qingtian emperor made a move against his body in the meantime, he would be in deep trouble. I must quickly make my way over as well. Knowing that there was no time to lose, Zhongxian quickly drew his soul out of the Qingtian emperor's body and stowed the body into a storage ring. He had come over in his soul form, so he did not have his storage ring with him. As such, he used the Qingtian emperor's one instead. Without wasting any time, he quickly hid the storage ring at a secret location before swiftly traveling through the altar as well. Hula! With a brilliant flash of light, Zhongxian vanished as well. The Qingtian emperor's soul appeared in the underground chamber. What's that? Is that a soul oracle? As the Qingtian emperor's soul harnessed overwhelming yin energy, it was swiftly noticed by Wu Shi and the others as soon as it traveled over, and they swiftly rose to their feet in alarm. Why are there so many master teachers here? Out of worry, Wu Shi had called for around 30 master teachers from the master teacher pavilion to guard Zhongxian while he was cultivating and explore the underground chamber for clues, but who knew that the Qingtian emperor would suddenly appear at this moment? If they capture me, I will be doomed. Goosebumps rose all over the Qingtian emperor's body. In his injured state, there was no way he could match so many master teachers simultaneously. Even as a leaving aperture realm expert, he could very well lose his life. Just as the Qingtian emperor was scanning his surroundings to formulate a countermeasure, he suddenly caught sight of Zhongxian's unmoving body, and a sharp glint surfaced in his eyes. Wait a moment, isn't that his body? Ha ha ha, wonderful. Since you possessed my body, I shall take yours as well. Su. He swiftly flitted his way over. Since you were the one who started it, don't blame me for this. Let's see who will have the last laugh. Chapter 1193. Are you looking for me? Is that soul oracle trying to possess Zhongxia? Quick, stop him. Sensing the soul oracle swiftly making its way toward Zhongxian, Wu Shi and the others narrowed their eyes in astonishment. They swiftly moved to intercept the soul oracle. Even though the Qingtian emperor's soul had been tempered by the leaving aperture ordeal, the cold yin aura that shrouded around it was still very apparent. It was easily discernible through one's spiritual perception. Hualala! Many surges of energy burst forth toward the Qingtian emperor, wanting to strike him down. Humph! Under the barrage of attacks, even the Qingtian emperor was unable to get off completely unscathed. Nevertheless, his eyes still narrowed in tenacity and callousness. The reason he had been completely helpless before Zhongxian previously was because the latter had possessed his body, so he had not dared execute his strongest moves for fear that he would injure his own body. On the other hand, while the master teachers before him were not too powerful, they were still insufficient to stop him. Seal! The Qingtian emperor bellowed as he raised his finger. Huala! A ripple swept through the surroundings, and all of a sudden, It was as if the air in the underground chamber had been frozen by some compelling might. In the blink of an eye, it was as if everyone was standing in a marshland, severely limiting their movements and attacks. "He's a true leaving aperture realm expert," Zhong Jiuxiao exclaimed anxiously. One who wielded enough strength to seal all of their attacks simultaneously. There was no doubt about it. The Soul Oracle had already undergone the lightning ordeal and successfully reached true leaving aperture rel. Against an expert of the other party's caliber, their numerical advantage did not mean much. Wu Shi also swiftly came to the same conclusion. Knowing that the Soul Oracle before them was not a weak foe, he quickly bellowed, "Soaring Dragon Formation." The Soaring Dragon Formation was a formation that every master teacher in the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion would practice in case of emergency situations. Kuala. A moment after Wu Shi issued the command, the disciplined master teachers had already formed the formation. The combined strength of over 20 master teachers quickly overwhelmed the seal that the Qingtian Emperor had cast over the surroundings, causing the seal to shatter as if a glacier breaking into ice shards. A leaving aperture realm cultivator still was not qualified to come into contact with spatial laws yet. As such, the seal that they set up was not, in the truest sense, a sealing of space but a forceful impediment measure set up through their overwhelming strength. If there was another might that had exceeded the strength of the seal they had put up, the seal would shatter in an instant. On the other hand, the Qingtian Emperor did not expect the master teachers to react so swiftly to his attack and break his seal in an instant. Not daring to hesitate in the least, he used the temporary lapse in the master teacher's defenses as they were dealing with the seal to dash right toward Zhongxian before diving into the latter's glabella. Ha ha ha. Having successfully entered Zhongxian's body, an inexplicable feeling of joy spread across the Qingtian Emperor's entirety, and he could not help but burst into hearty laughter. "Trying to kill me? Now that I am in that bastard's body, let's see what you can do about me." Principal Zhong. Watching as the Soul Oracle successfully bypassed their defenses and possessed Zhongxian, the eyes of Wu Shi and the others reddened in panic. Even with their limited understanding of Soul Oracles, they knew that once a soul successfully possessed another individual's body, the individual's soul would be utterly destroyed. They had specially been deployed there in order to protect Zhongshi while the latter was cultivating, and yet, such a matter had still occurred right in front of their eyes. Kuala. Their initial fluster swiftly turned into rage as they surrounded Zhongxian's body with sharp killing intent in their eyes. "What? You want to make a move against me? Come on then. If you aren't scared of killing this talented master teacher of yours, give it your best shot." The Qingtian Emperor howled maniacally as he watched the angry faces around him in joy. However, before he could finish his words, his eyes suddenly narrowed in disbelief, as if something inconceivable had just happened. What is this? No, this can't be. Nu. Putong. Amid the crescendoing scream of agony, Zhongxian's body suddenly collapsed to the ground, convulsing endlessly. Wu Shi and the others were already prepared to make their move to avenge Zhongxian when such a sight suddenly appeared before their eyes. They could not help but glance at one another in confusion, not knowing what they should make of the situation before them. Why would the person who was arrogantly boasting before their faces a moment ago suddenly be reduced to such a state? Please. Forgive me. I won't possess your body anymore. Let me leave. Let me leave. A desperate scream echoed as the Qingtian Emperor's soul frenziedly tried to break out of Zhongxian's body, only to realize that his pores had been completely sealed. There was no way for him to escape. "Please, I'm begging you. Don't kill me. I won't do anything anymore, I promise you. So, please. No." Tzzzzzzzz. The screaming grew louder and louder, as if reflecting the Qingtian Emperor's deep fear of what he was seeing. A while later, the voice finally began to soften, and it gradually quietened into silence. "Who?" A flicker of light burst from the altar, and Zhongxian finally returned to the underground chamber as well. Knowing the immense strength that the Qingtian Emperor wielded, he immediately rushed back as soon as he could. He had only managed to keep the latter in check but holding the latter's body as hostage, but if the latter were to go on a rampage in Qingyuan City, it could very well spell a calamity. Thus, as soon as he appeared, he immediately scanned the surroundings to find the Qingtian Emperor, only to see a room full of master teachers instead. "Another one? Get him, someone amid the crowd exclaimed. Before Zhongxian could even process what was going on, a barrage of attacks suddenly fell upon him. Having cultivated the Heaven's Path soul art, Zhongxian's soul was devoid of the usual yin attribute that soul oracles had. As such, it was not easily discernible to cultivators. Only when a cultivator had their spiritual perception on would they stand a chance in perceiving the presence of Zhongxian's soul. However, activating one's spiritual perception was extremely exhausting for a cultivator, so they could not afford to have it activated for extended periods of time. It was due to this that Zhongxian had been able to slip past most cultivators in his soul form easily. But as luck would have it, the Qingtian Emperor's sudden appearance had alarmed the surrounding master teachers, compelling them to activate their spiritual perception. On top of that, the flash of light from the altar had also caught their attention, allowing them to instantaneously notice Zhongxian's presence. Pilipala. The seemingly omnipresent barrage of attacks heading toward him caused goosebumps to rise all over Zhongxian in alarm. What the heck is going on? I was only gone for a short moment. Why are there so many master teachers in the area all of a sudden? And why are they attacking me so furiously at that? Have they gone mad? And where is the Qingtian Emperor? To make things worse, there was no way Zhongxian could explain the situation. Otherwise, he would expose his identity as a soul oracle, and that would surely raise quite a huge storm within the Master Teacher Pavilion, bringing him endless trouble in the future. Self-righteous individuals would impeach him for learning the depraved arts of the soul oracles, whereas greedy individuals would possibly seek him out in the hope of obtaining the heritage of the soul oracles from him. It would be foolish to raise another problem just to solve one. Feeling so indignant within that he could have vomited blood, Zhongxian swiftly compressed his soul together through his heavenly art of dimension unravel, allowing him to avoid the barrage of attacks by a hair's breadth. After which, making use of the brief opening in the crowd's attacks, he immediately dashed toward his body as fast as he could. Another one that's trying to harm Zhongshe? You're courting death. Kill that bastard. Everyone's eyes reddened in rage upon seeing the enemy's movements. Their previous mistake had allowed the soul before to possess Zhongshe's body, nearly costing Zhongshe his life. There was no way they were going to allow themselves to make the same mistake again. Hualala. Drawing all their strength, they immediately sent another frenzied barrage of attacks toward Zhongxian, preventing him from moving a single step further. Zhongxian would have torn all his hair out at that moment if he could. Instead of dealing with the Qingtian Emperor, why was this group of master teachers so obsessed with stopping him? Ding ding, come over here. Zhongxian immediately called for the Golden Origin Cauldron through the telepathic connection from their soul contract. Master. Hearing Zhongxian's voice, the Golden Origin Cauldron immediately leaped up. Quick, bring my body over to the altar, Zhongxian instructed. Before the endless barrage of attacks in his path, there was no way Zhongxian could afford to forcefully push through. As such, he could only engage the Golden Origin Cauldron's assistance. Very well. Nodding, the Golden Origin Cauldron immediately leaped up toward Zhongxian's body with a resounding hoo. Everyone, make way. The Golden Origin Cauldron shouted as it rammed its way forward. It slammed into Zhongxian's body forcefully, sending it flying straight toward the altar. Pilipala. The crisp sound of bone cracking. Zhongxian slapped his forehead. Can't you treat my body more carefully? He knew that the Golden Origin Cauldron was not a reliable individual, and this matter only served to further his belief. As stifled as he felt, he knew that this was not the moment to be concerned about this matter. Watching as his body flew in his direction, his soul swiftly dived into his body. As soon as he regained control over his body, he immediately drove his junchi to heal his injuries before opening his eyes once more. Standing before the group of master teachers, he asked, the Qingtian Emperor should have come by earlier. Did any of you see him? But before Zhongxian could finish his words, he suddenly noticed that the atmosphere was not right. Somehow, he felt as if everyone's killing intent was directed toward him. Thus, he narrowed his eyes and asked, what are you all trying to do? Who are you? Even if you possess Principal Zhong's body, do you think that we will allow you to get out of here alive? Wu Shi bellowed furiously. Through their spiritual perception, they had personally witnessed the soul that had just arrived earlier diving into Zhongxian's body, possessing it. That sight had nearly made them erupt on the spot. It was one thing for them to fail to stop the earlier soul from possessing Zhongxian's body, but for the second soul to succeed as well. Do you honestly think that our master-teacher pavilion is full of pushovers? Do you think that Zhongshi's body is your playground? Seeing that the crowd was only showing such a response out of worry for him, Zhongxian shook his head and patiently explained, I am Zhongxian. I've just awoken from my earlier cultivation. Do you think that we'll believe your words? Wu Shi roared angrily. The rage of the other master teachers did not alleviate at all either. If anything, the hostility in their eyes seemed to have further deepened. You opened your eyes right after the soul entered Zhongshi's body, and you still dare to claim that you are Zhongshi. Do you really take us for fools? You don't believe me? Zhongxian frowned. Wu Shi, the attack you used on me earlier was the 7th move of the 6 harmony swords. Your execution has 8 flaws in total, namely inept swordsmanship, lack of control in your breathing, unrefined execution of strength, incomplete conception in the technique. Knowing that there was no way he could explain his way out of this, Zhongxian decided to resort to another method to convince them of his identity instead. Flaw identification was a capability that master teachers were the most adept at. Naturally, it was also the best way for him to verify his identity. Hearing how the young man sharply pointed out all the flaws in his technique with ease, Wu Shi could not help but widen his eyes in astonishment. Last but not least, your soul has sustained some degree of damage from the demonic tunes back at the Qiu Wu Palace, and it has not recovered since then. As such, it has affected your execution of techniques to some degree. May I know if what I have said is correct? Wu Shi was stunned for a moment before hurriedly nodding. Why you right? Then, am I Zhongxian? Zhongxian's eyebrows shot up. Why yes, you are. Wu Shi quickly nodded affirmatively. To be able to point out all his flaws while being aware of the happenings back at the Qiu Wu Palace, who else could the young man before him be if not Zhongxian? After seeing that he had successfully convinced the crowd of his identity, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. Then, with a confused frown, he asked, what happened earlier? Why are all of you attacking me? Knowing that there could very well be master teachers on the other side, he had made sure to proceed very carefully. And yet, he still ended up being exposed in an instant and even nearly lost his life as a result of it. Furthermore, even if he was an unidentified intruder in their eyes, their rage seemed to be a little too excessive. Without a doubt, something must have happened before he arrived. It's like this. Wu Shi quickly filled Zhongxian in on the earlier happenings. You are saying that a soul dived into my body, and shortly after, he began screaming in agony? Hearing those words, Zhongxian could not help but shake his head. Was that Qingtian Emperor a fool? His body was filled with Heaven's Path Shunqi, the very nemesis of soul oracles. And yet, he brazenly dared to possess his body. That was no different from leaping into a pool of toxic for him. He had been feeling a little vexed about the Qingtian Emperor's escape earlier, but who would have thought that the latter would be so dumb as to end his own life? Or maybe, he felt too indignant from seeing me possessing his body, and blinded by rage, he wanted to possess mine to return the favor. Zhongxian rubbed his glabella. Who would have thought that the emperor of the Qingtian lineage, a leaving aperture realm cultivator, would meet his end in such an unintelligent manner? Judging by Wu Shi's account, the Qingtian emperor should have been reduced to ash from being burned by his Heaven's Path Shunqi, thus dissipating from the face of the world. Zhongxian waved his hand and said, Don't worry, I'm fine. I was cultivating a unique cultivation technique earlier, which temporarily deprived me of my awareness of my surroundings. If I'm not mistaken, those 2 soul oracles should have died from the passive ability of one of the secret arts I cultivate. I see, that's a relief. Hearing that the matter concerned Zhongxian's secret art, the crowd decided not to ask any further. On the other hand, Wu Shi knew very well what was going on. Zhongxian was a celestial master teacher, and how could the body of a celestial master teacher be taken away by a soul oracle so easily? Thank you for protecting me earlier. Knowing that the crowd was doing it all for him, Zhongxian clasped his fist and thanked them. The crowd quickly clasped their fists back and replied, There's no need to stand on ceremony, Zhongshi. After trading some pleasantries, Zhongxian took his leave before curiously assessing the internal state of his body. Even if the Qingtian Emperor had been killed by the Heaven's Path Shenqi, there should still have been some traces of the other party within his body. At this moment, a bone-chilling voice suddenly sounded in his mind, as if a spectre. "Hihi, are you looking for me?" Chapter 1194. An eye. Who is it? Zhongxian suddenly felt all his hair stand on end. For the other party to get into his mind without his noticing it. Who could it be? He quickly turned his attention to the area where the voice came from, and a pitch-black tunnel appeared before him. It seemed to extend on and on, leading into a dark abyss. The bone-chilling voice spoke once more. "Come over." Following which, Zhongxian felt his consciousness falter, and by the time he came to, he was already standing right before the tunnel. To think that he would be completely helpless before the other party's strength. "Who in the world are you?" Zhongxian asked with an awful complexion as he swiftly scanned his surroundings. It did not take him long to realize that there was a massive eye right before him. The gaze of the massive eye was deeply unnerving. It seemed to peer right into the depths of one's mind, intensifying whatever dark thoughts one had. "No wonder you were able to land my subordinate in such a pitiful state." A cold sneer echoed from the massive eye. "A celestial master teacher, huh? It has been many years since Kongsha, so it's probably about time for another one to appear." "You can tell?" Zhongxian narrowed his eyes in alarm as he felt tension clutch his heart. Even a Saint 7 Dan expert like Luo Chengxian was unable to see through his identity, and yet, the fellow before him was able to tell with just a single glance. Just how powerful could the other party be? The eye harumphed coldly. "If I could not even tell this much, the years I spent fighting against Kongsha would have really been wasted." "Years spent fighting against Kongsha? You are vicious?" Zhongxian asked with a deep frown. Previously, the vicious that he was sealed within his Book of Heaven's Path had already told him that the secret art to nabbing souls had been created by him, and it was highly likely that there was another body part of vicious in the marshlands of the Northern Meadows. But who would have thought that the other party would appear here? In the form of a massive eye at that. "You have heard of my name?" the eye asked curiously. "Well, that is to be expected. I managed to trap Kongsha within Chenxi AI, nearly killing him. Even if you master teachers wish to preserve Kongsha's honor, there will inevitably be some records of me." "Trap Kongsha?" Zhongxian was stunned. Due to the tremendous damage he had suffered prior to his death, the memory of the vicious that he had sealed within his Book of Heaven's Path was fragmented. As a result, that vicious had remembered very few details concerning Kongsha. On the other hand, the vicious before him seemed to know much more. While he did not have as deep respect for Kongsha as compared to the other master teachers, he had always known the latter to be an invincible existence on the master teacher continent. Yet, for vicious to have successfully trapped Kongsha in Chenxi and nearly killed the latter, just how powerful could vicious have been at his peak? It seems like you are unaware of that. Well, it does not matter anyway. If I devour a celestial master teacher, I should be able to recover a significant portion of my strength. With that, I will be able to struggle free of my restraints and become a free man once more. A sharp glint emerged in the massive eye as vicious voice sounded with a tinge of excitement in it. "For that, you will have no choice but to die." "Who?" Right after those words were spoken, Zhongxian suddenly felt an incomparably powerful suction force pulling him in from the depths of the tunnel, forcefully dragging his soul in. T. This is the soul nabbing secret art. Zhongxian's face immediately turned incredibly awful. He had nearly succumbed to the soul nabbing secret art when it was executed by the Qingtian Emperor, and now that it was being executed by Vicious himself, the creator of the technique, how could he possibly stand a chance? Watching as his soul was being dragged toward the tunnel, goosebumps rose all over Zhongxian's arms. As expected of the individual who had once fought toe-to-toe with Kongsha, even if Vicious retained no more than a small fragment of the strength he possessed earlier, it was still not something that he could withstand. There was simply too huge a difference between them. At this rate, it's just a matter of time before I get swallowed whole. Even though he had no idea what was at the end of the tunnel, his instincts told him that he would be doomed if he was pulled over to the other side. Thus, clenching his jaws, He drove his soul energy to the maximum and firmly persevered on. At the same time, he discreetly established a telepathic connection with the Book of Heaven's Path and asked Vicious about the current situation. "If I'm not mistaken, that should be my head and my eye," Vicious quickly replied. "Do you have any idea how I can deal with this?" Zhong Xian asked anxiously. "As powerful as the soul-nabbing secret art is, its effectiveness is limited across vast distances. In such circumstances, a medium may be required. For example, the Qingtian Emperor only managed to phase you through amplifying the prowess of the secret art through the altar. Well, back when I was at my peak, I was able to kill any Saint Tudan cultivator easily as long as they were within 1,000,000 li one from me, but given the current state that I am in, there's a high chance that the other party is using some kind of medium as well. As long as you destroy the medium, the soul-nabbing secret art should be undone," Vicious quickly explained. Back when he was at his peak, as long as he had a droplet of the other party's blood to trace the other party down, he would have been able to easily kill a Saint Tudan expert even from 1,000,000 li away. However, with his body parts scattered around the continent, he was currently nothing more than a shadow of his former self. Even if the other Vicious had recovered to a greater degree than him, it still should not have been possible for the other party to cast the soul-nabbing secret art over a great distance. The only possibility was that the other Vicious, just like the previous Qingtian Emperor, was using something nearby as a medium for his technique. A medium? Wait a moment. Hearing those words, a thought streaked across Zhong Xian's mind. The Qingtian Emperor's soul. Considering that it was just a moment ago that the Qingtian Emperor's soul had entered his body before the other Vicious' abrupt emergence, it was very likely that the medium was the Qingtian Emperor's soul. It seems like that fellow still has a breath left in him. Humph, let me see where you are hiding. With a direction in mind, Zhong Xian heaved a sigh of relief. While pushing his soul energy to his limit to fend off the suction force, he extended his spiritual perception throughout his entire body to find the hiding Qingtian Emperor. Found you. It took just a moment for Zhong Xian to notice a fragmented soul hiding in a corner of his mind. When uncontrolled, the Heaven's Path Zhenqi could circulate through his entire body, but it could not reach his mind. It seemed like the sharp-witted Qingtian Emperor had swiftly noticed this and dived for his mind, thus surviving the ordeal. Humph. Zhong Xian swiftly drew his Heaven's Path Zhenqi toward his mind to destroy the remnants of the Qingtian Emperor's soul. Amidst the Qingtian Emperor's cry of agony, Zhong Xian felt the suction force growing weaker and weaker. At the same time, the massive eye also began to fade from existence along with the tunnel. You noticed it? Well, it matters not. You might have survived this time around, but I'll eventually get you. With a menacing bellow, the massive eye vanished with a resounding hoo. Zhong Xian's surroundings abruptly morphed, and in the next moment, he found that he was still standing in the underground chamber, as if nothing had happened at all. However, the cold sweat that he was drenched in reminded him of how close he had come to death. In just an instant, the other Vicious had successfully put him in a trance and nearly devoured him whole. That was a close one. Even though he was finally out of danger, Zhong Xian found that his heart just would not calm down. It was too scary. Had he not reacted swiftly, his soul could have been dragged over to the other side. He might have managed to outwit the Qingtian Emperor, but it would not have been easy for him to do the same to Vicious. Master, pardon me for not making a move then. I could not do anything in that situation, or else I would have exposed my existence. Once that fellow knows of my presence, he'll surely pursue you with even more extreme methods, and that would have just placed you in greater danger. Vicious explained from the Book of Heaven's Path. I understand. Zhong Xian nodded. The other party was right. While the Book of Heaven's Path had limited his vicious activity, the divine aura that shrouded it had concealed his presence as well, preventing the other Vicious from perceiving his existence. However, if his Vicious were to make a move, the other Vicious would surely sense his existence. Every single independent Vicious was trying to seek and devour the other Viciouses so as to regain his strength. While their side was trying to hunt down the other Viciouses, there was no doubt that the other Viciouses had the same intentions in mind as well. They were currently still unprepared to deal with the other Vicious, so it would be unwise for them to expose themselves. Furthermore, once the other Vicious learned of the existence of his Vicious, the other Vicious would surely raise his guard, making their chances of overwhelming him very slim. At the very least, with his vicious hidden in the shadows, he would have another effective card to play against the other vicious. This would put them in a more advantageous position. How strong is the other party? Are you a match for him? Zhong Xian asked. Vicious hesitated for a moment before replying. I can't clearly gauge his current strength, but from the looks of it, his is at the leaving aperture realm at the very minimum. I am no match for him in my current state. However, if I could devour the Qingtian Emperor's soul, I should be able to reach leaving aperture realm as well. Devour the Qingtian Emperor's soul? Zhong Xian contemplated for a moment before nodding in approval. Even though the Qingtian Emperor was an otherworldly demon, he had inherited the heritage of the soul oracles, and his cultivation had even reached the true leaving aperture realm. If Vicious were to consume the Qingtian Emperor's soul, it would surely benefit him greatly. Thank you. Vicious replied in gratitude. Zhong Xian paused for a moment before adding, wait a moment first, I wish to interrogate him first. I'll pass him over to you once I'm done. Trapped by the Heaven's Path Zhenqi and grinded down from the earlier clash, the Qingtian Emperor no longer posed any threat to him. There were still some doubts in his mind that he wanted to clarify with the Qingtian Emperor. Principal Zhong. While it seemed to have been a lengthy encounter, in truth, only 10 seconds had passed since the appearance of the Black Tunnel. Raising his head, he saw Wu Shi looking at him with a worried look. I'm fine. Wu Shi, I need you to follow me somewhere. Oh right, get your men to move the altar to the Master Teacher Pavilion and hand it over to the envoy from the headquarters once he arrives. That would serve as evidence of the activities of the otherworldly demonic tribe here, Zhong Xian said. Noted. Wu Shi quickly issued some instructions before following Zhong Xian out of the underground chamber. Returning to Chen Zhe's residence, Zhong Xian activated his Eye of Insight and began scanning the area once more. It did not take long before he identified a direction and swiftly began heading in it. Chen Zhe's residence was located in the suburbs of Qingyuan City. As such, it did not take long for Zhong Xian and Wu Shi to travel beyond the city walls and into the depths of the mountain forest. Soon, a tattered, wooden hut appeared before their eyes. Finally arriving at the destination, Zhong Xian remarked in astonishment, "Here it is. I never thought that the two would be so far away from one another." He had thought that the two altars should be in proximity with one another, but who would have thought that there would be a distance of several dozen kilometers between the two? To be able to drag his soul across such distance, Vicious' secret art was truly fearsome. Entering the wooden hut, Zhong Xian swiftly retrieved the storage ring that he had hidden earlier. This. On the other hand, a look of disbelief surfaced on Wu Shi's face when he noticed that there was an identical altar in the wooden hut as well. Take a look at who this is. Zhong Xian drove his Heaven's Path Zhenqi to destroy the soul imprint of the storage ring before flicking his wrist. A corpse materialized before him. Isn't this Vice Pavilion Master Tian? Didn't he explode earlier? Wu Shi was taken aback. Tian Qing had exploded right before his eyes, and he had sent the other party's body back to the Master Teacher Pavilion for investigation. How could there be another corpse here? Furthermore, this body was completely intact, and it commanded an even stronger aura than Vice Pavilion Master Tian's. This is his disguise, Zhong Xian said as he flicked his hand over the Qingtian Emperor's body. Voila! The corpse suddenly grew much bulkier, and its height abruptly increased to more than 2 meters. While there was no significant difference in its facial features, a fearsome killing intent abruptly burst forth from him. He's an otherworldly demon? Wu Shi's eyes narrowed in shock. That's right. Zhong Xian nodded. Not only is he an otherworldly demon, he's the Qingtian Emperor. The Emperor of the Qingtian lineage? Wu Shi could not believe what he was hearing. How could Vice Pavilion Master Tian have been an emperor of the Qingtian lineage? If that was true, how could he have failed to notice it despite having known the other party for several centuries? It's like this. Zhong Xian swiftly filled Wu Shi in on the story. This. Wu Shi's lips quivered in horror. To think that the Qingtian Emperor would have successfully incarnated his soul and even risen to the position of the vice head of the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion without their notice. This was truly a horrifying oversight on their part. If this was the case for Qingtian, How many other master teachers in their master teacher pavilion were otherworldly demons in disguise? Chapter 1195, Celestial Amulet of Legacy. You should understand why I asked you to come here with me alone. This matter must not leak out at any cost, or else it could stir a panic among the populace. Seeing that Wu Shi had understood the severity of the issue, Zhongxian instructed, nevertheless, it's still of paramount importance that we uncover the traitors of mankind, or else they could bring catastrophe upon us. Thus, you must conduct the investigation privately and destroy whatever lingering influence the Qingtian Emperor has in the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion once and for all. I understand. Wu Shi nodded. He knew that Zhongxian was right. If they could not purge the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion of its spies, it would only be a matter of time before the spies did them in. I'll leave this corpse to you. When the envoy from the headquarters arrives, use it as evidence and report the matter to him, Zhongxian said. It was true that the body of the Qingtian Emperor wielded incredible strength, but it was not as agile and nimble as being in his own body. As such, he did not think that there was a need for him to retain the Qingtian Emperor's body for his own use. More importantly, a vice pavilion master was even involved in the matter. In view of that, it would not be convenient for him to use the body in public. As such, it was best to leave the matter to Wu Shi. Thank you. Wu Shi clasped his fist in gratitude before stowing the corpse into his storage ring. To be honest, if not for the young man before him, he never would have believed that the meritorious Vice Pavilion Master Tian was the emperor of the Qingtian lineage. All right, you should return back to the Master Teacher Pavilion to deal with the matter. I also want to take a rest, Zhongxian said. Hearing those words, Wu Shi bade his farewell before leaving. After Wu Shi left, Zhongxian swiftly stowed the altar before him into his storage ring. Following which, he took out the Qingtian Emperor's storage ring and extended his consciousness into it. As the emperor of the Qingtian lineage, the Qingtian Emperor would have plenty of treasures in his possession. A painting materialized in Zhongxian's hands. It was the grade 8 painting that he had appraised a while back. Placing the painting aside, he continued looking on. A moment later, he delightfully took out a few jade boxes from the storage ring. Slowly opening them, a concentrated surge of spiritual energy suddenly gushed into Zhongxian's face, leaving him feeling refreshed. Concentrated high-tier spirit stones. 6 jade boxes with 5 concentrated high-tier spirit stones each. That means there's a total of 30 of them here. Zhongxian thought in agitation. He had only managed to obtain 18 concentrated high-tier spirit stones from the emperor of the Qingyuan Empire, and yet, who could have thought that the Qingtian Emperor would actually have 30 of them in his possession? The Qingtian lineage sure was wealthy. With this 30, I should be able to advance to the embryonic soul realm easily. Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. Strength was the foundation he had to build up before he could pursue anything. Only with sufficient strength would he be able to vie for the slot to the Sanctum of Sages, rise through the ranks, and gain the ability to negotiate on equal terms with the Zhong clan and the Luo clan. Time was truly not on his side. He only had until the 3rd month of next year. He did not want to see his lover getting married to a so-called talent of the Zhong clan whom she had not even met before. After obtaining the concentrated high-tier spirit stones, Zhongxian decided to leap straight into the myriad anthive nest. It was quieter within the nest, and he did not have to worry about being interrupted by anyone in there. Crossing his legs, he placed the 30 concentrated high-tier spirit stones in front of him before muttering, "Time to start." Concentrating his focus on his soul, he moved his soul toward his origin core once more, and this time, he managed to successfully infuse his soul into the origin core without any problems. At the same time, he swiftly devoured the spiritual energy contained within the concentrated high-tier spirit stones and channeled it through his meridians toward his origin core. In order to reach the embryonic soul realm, he would have to fuse his soul and origin core together and morph it into the shape of an embryo. He had already compiled the cultivation technique required for the morphing process, and all that he had been lacking was spirit stones. Driven with immense power, the massive congregation of spiritual energy crashed toward the origin core with astounding momentum. Boom! As the rate at which Zhongxian absorbed spiritual energy increased, a vortex of spiritual energy quickly formed around him. Under the massive impact from the crashing spiritual energy, a gap finally opened in his origin core. A small hand slowly crept through the small gap in his origin core. Knowing that this was the crucial period, Zhongxian's eyebrows shot up as he channeled all the spiritual energy he had absorbed toward his origin core at maximum speed. Break. Sila. The origin core finally broke open, and a small infant slowly climbed out from it. This is an embryonic soul? Seeing his embryonic soul, Zhongxian's lips could not help but twitch uncontrollably. It was true that his embryonic soul did resemble a baby, similar to that of other cultivators, but his embryonic soul was 10 meters tall. Imagine a 10-meter tall baby. This was truly frightening. An ominous feeling suddenly arose in Zhongxian's heart. Just how much spiritual energy will I require to develop it into a primordial spirit? If his embryonic soul was this much bigger than that of the other cultivators, did it not mean that the spiritual energy he would require to achieve a breakthrough would surely be much greater? Other cultivators might only require a single concentrated high-tier spirit stone to cultivate through the entire embryonic soul realm or even achieve a breakthrough to the primordial spirit realm. But with the size of his embryonic soul, he really could not begin to imagine how many concentrated high-tier spirit stones he would require. Sighing deeply, Zhongxian continued absorbing the spiritual energy within the concentrated high-tier spirit stones to raise his cultivation. Some time later, when the final concentrated high-tier spirit stone broke, Zhongxian slowly opened his eyes and shook his head helplessly. Embryonic soul realm intermediate stage. He had thought that 30 concentrated high-tier spirit stone should suffice for him to reach embryonic soul realm pinnacle, but who would have thought that they were completely depleted by the time he reached embryonic soul realm intermediate stage? Zhongxian rubbed his glabella in frustration. At this rate, I'll require at least 50 more concentrated high-tier spirit stone before I can reach embryonic soul realm pinnacle. Even finding a single concentrated high-tier spirit stone felt like finding a needle in a haystack. Where in the world was he supposed to find the 50 concentrated high-tier spirit stone required for him to reach embryonic soul realm pinnacle? In the first place, it was doubtful that he could find so many concentrated high-tier spirit stones even if he flipped Qingyuan City upside down. Sighing deeply once more, Zhongxian consoled himself. At the very least, despite the fearsome rate of depletion of spirit stones, my fighting prowess did rise proportionately to the consumption. While it did pain his heart to see 30 concentrated high-tier spirit stones vanishing so swiftly, admittedly, he was still rather satisfied with the rise in his fighting prowess. Previously, he would have struggled to be a match for Pavilion Master Go, relying heavily on his superior combat skills and adept use of formations to achieve victory. However, with his newfound strength, he would be able to match even the leaving Aperture Realm Qingtian Emperor. In other words, despite possessing only a cultivation of embryonic soul realm intermediate stage, he was already on par with a leaving Aperture Realm primary stage cultivator. With such strength, it could be said that he had finally reached the peak of the Qingyuan Empire. When he first arrived at Qingyuan City, he was only a Saint 1 Dan pinnacle rookie, only able to match Saint 3 Dan cultivators. Even primordial spirit realm cultivators would have been able to do him in easily. But now, even Hall Master Xing was not a match for him. Time sure flies. Just thinking of it evoked some reminiscence within him. This should be the 8th day since I arrived in Qingyuan City, Zhongxian remarked internally as a slight tinge of redness slowly crept across his face. 8 whole days, and yet, he had only advanced less than 2 realms. Zhongxian could not help but feel deeply ashamed of himself. It seemed like he really needed to work harder from now on. Forget it. I should check on that fellow now. Tossing aside his stifled feelings, Zhongxian tapped the area before him, and a soul appeared before his eyes. At this moment, the Qingtian Emperor had already been ground down by the Heaven's Pathshanqi, retaining only half of his original strength. Severely wounded, he seemed to be spiritless and lethargic, reminiscent of a person on his deathbed. Nevertheless, upon catching sight of Zhongxian, flames of hostility began burning in his eyes. "You son of a bitch, I'll kill you." Roaring furiously, the Qingtian Emperor charged forward to tear the young man before him apart. However, before he could even deal any damage, a single finger abruptly appeared before his eyes. "Pada." The next moment, the Qingtian Emperor found himself firmly pressed down on the floor, unable to move at all no matter how hard he struggled. Why you? How can you be so strong? The Qingtian Emperor narrowed his eyes in disbelief. It was just a while ago that the other party had been no match for him at all. How could the other party have become so much stronger in the blink of an eye? To be able to render him powerless with a single finger, just what kind of cultivation realm had he reached? Since he could not be bothered to waste his breath with the other party, Zhongxian got straight to business. As an otherworldly demon, how did you manage to cross over to the Master-Teacher continent? How did you become acquainted with Vicious and inherit the heritage of the Soul Oracles? How many spies of yours are there in the Master-Teacher Pavilion? Speak. I'll just say this once, I have plenty of time to play with you. Confess, and I'll consider giving you a painless death. Otherwise, I'll become your worst nightmare. The reason he did not let Vicious swallow the Qingtian Emperor directly was because he wanted to find out these things from the other party's mouth. Ha ha ha. Raising his head proudly, the Qingtian Emperor obstinately declared, "Do you think that I'll submit to human scum like you? Dream on. I am the Emperor of the Qingtian lineage, death brings no fear to me." However, before he could finish his words, a kick suddenly fell on his head, smashing it into the ground. Following which, he heard the voice of the young man once more. "Vicious, as long as I retain his soul energy for your consumption, it won't matter if I kill his consciousness, right? Very well, I won't stand on ceremony then." Right after saying those words, the other party's palm rose up, and a surge of burning heaven's path Zhenqi gathered in his grasp. The palm gradually lowered toward the Qingtian Emperor, leaving him with a burning sensation that was intensifying by the moment. The Qingtian Emperor tried to struggle free but to no avail. When the palm finally fell on his soul, a wretched scream escaped from his lips. "You are." He had been planning to grit his teeth and bear the torture until the very end, but in the very next moment, he saw the other party flicking his finger and pulling a thin thread from his soul. The eyes of the Qingtian Emperor immediately widened in horror. Soul search. As a soul oracle, there was no way he would be unaware of the technique that Zhongxian was executing. Known to be one of the most violent techniques of the soul oracles, it would put the victim through excruciating pain and deal irreparable damage. Even if his soul did not dissipate at the end of the process, the chances were that he would have become mentally retarded. For a person as proud and lofty as the Qingtian Emperor, the thought of living life mentally retarded was unacceptable to him, and it filled him with tremendous fear. I'll speak, the Qingtian Emperor immediately exclaimed. "I already gave you a chance earlier. It's too late now." Unwilling to waste his breath on the other party, Zhongxian forcefully tugged on the string and pulled it out. Toward his enemies, he was not so patient and kind as to offer them second chances. It was only out of consideration of Vicious' needs that he had spared the Qingtian Emperor for so long. However, since Vicious did not require the latter's mind to be intact, there was no need for him to hesitate any longer. At this point, he could tell that the other party's mental fortitude had already fallen, so he would be able to acquire whatever he needed through the soul search. TZZZZZZZ. After drawing out the other party's memory, Zhongxian began studying it carefully. 2 hours later, Zhongxian exhaled deeply before rubbing his glabella. Through his soul search, he had already gained a thorough understanding of the ins and outs of the incident. Around 2,000 years ago, this emperor of the Qingtian lineage had unwittingly established a connection to Vicious consciousness in the midst of a ritual. Making use of that opportunity, Vicious had used a secret art that tapped into the energy from the tributes to teleport the Qingtian Emperor over and imparted the cultivation techniques of the soul oracles to him. In order to infiltrate the higher ranks of the Master-Teacher Pavilion, he had bid his time while kidnapping young infants who showed some talent for cultivation, intending to reincarnate his will within them. This secret art was extremely complicated, and it would deal severe damage to one's soul as well. Even tapping into Vicious' deep comprehension of souls, he could only afford to use the technique once every 10 years. It had taken 120 attempts before he managed to succeed with Tian Qing. As for why the Qingtian Emperor would go through so much trouble to infiltrate the higher ranks of the Master-Teacher Pavilion personally, the reason was detailed in his memory as well. It's for Kong Shi's celestial amulet of legacy, Zhong Xian muttered with a grim expression. Chapter 1196. The friendly spar between the combat master halls begins. Before Kong Shi disappeared, he left behind 6 celestial amulets of legacy. One was known to be with the master-teacher pavilion, whereas the other 5 had disappeared from the face of the world. Legend had it that the gathering of all 6 celestial amulets of legacy would herald the opening of the Temple of Confucius, and those who entered it would be able to obtain his ultimate treasure, the Great Codex of Spring and Autumn. It was for this reason that many people had been seeking the celestial amulets of legacy over the past several dozen millenniums, but it was a pity that they were nowhere to be found. Or perhaps, they might have already been found, just that no one dared proclaim their ownership of them. After all, this was linked to Kong Shi's ultimate treasure. Even master teachers would lose their rationality before it. It was through the mouth of Vicious that the Qingtian Emperor had learned of the news concerning the celestial amulets of legacy, and in a bid to lay his hands on it, he had set up elaborate plans. Through his soul search, Zhong Xian realized that there was a reason that the Qingtian Emperor was so determined to find the Qiuwu Palace. Based on the Qingtian Emperor's memories, there should be a key to finding a celestial amulet of legacy within the Qiuwu Palace, but it doesn't seem like anything is there at all. Rather, he had made the decision to seek out the Qiuwu Palace only after tracing down the clues he had. On top of learning that there was a key to the celestial amulet of legacy, he had also discovered that there was a sliver of Kong Shi's will that lingered in there as well. If things had gone well, he might even have been able to uncover the precise location of the Temple of Confucius while obtaining the celestial amulet of legacy. The Temple of Confucius was a heritage that Kong Shi had left behind for the later generations. It was hidden within the void, and there was no one in the world who knew where it was located. It seems like the intelligence that the Qingtian Emperor has obtained is untrue. Zhong Xian shook his head. He had looked through the Qiuwu Palace twice, but there was nothing reminiscent of a key in there. In fact, there was not a single thing in there that pointed to the celestial amulets of legacy at all. Well, how could the elusive celestial amulets of legacy be obtained so easily? Other than the Qiuwu Palace, the Qingtian Emperor had also learned that a painter had chanced upon a celestial amulet of legacy, and he had detailed it with a painting of Kong Shi's silhouette. After hearing the rumors, the Qingtian Emperor had swiftly captured the painter to interrogate him, but to no avail. 3 years ago, he had unintentionally found the heritage that the painter had left behind, and within the heritage was a certain grade 8 painting. He had suspected that the painting might have been the one mentioned in those rumors, and as luck would have it, he discovered a seal on it. That had further supported his deduction. Unfortunately, he had been unable to find a way to decipher the seal. After many failures, he had eventually decided to turn to the head of the Qingyuan Empire Appraiser Hall, Guild Leader Mu, for help. And the rest was as how Zhong Xian remembered it. Zhong Xian frowned. Does that mean that the place that I saw in the painting was the location where the celestial amulet of legacy is located? While the clue concerning the Qiuwu Palace had led to a dead end, it was a fact that he had seen Kong Shi's silhouette within the grade 8 painting, so there should have been no mistake about it. Zhong Xian made up his mind. I really must investigate where the mountain range is after I return and find it. On top of uncovering that, Zhong Xian also managed to obtain a list of traitors from the Master-Teacher Pavilion as well. There were more 100 of them, and they were scattered throughout the Qingyuan Empire. The otherworldly demonic tribe was blessed with long lifespans, far exceeding the 1,000 years that a human saint realm cultivator would have. Thus, it had not been too difficult for them to plant a few spies here and there. Not all master teachers were strong-willed enough to withstand the sweet whisperings of the otherworldly demonic tribe, so some of them had eventually succumbed and become their puppets. Zhong Xian swiftly jotted down a copy of their names before sending them over to Wu Shi through his communication jade token. After that was done, he heaved a long sigh of relief. With this, they would be able to root out the Qingtian Emperor's influence in the Qingyuan Empire once and for all. Vicious, I'll leave him to you. After uncovering all that he wanted to know, Zhong Xian waved his hand and passed the soul of the Qingtian Emperor over to Vicious. In the 2,000 years that the Qingtian Emperor had spent living among the humans, he had stained his hands with the blood of countless master teachers. To be honest, Zhongxian thought that the other party was getting off too lightly. "Thank you, Master," Vicious replied excitedly. Getting to his feet, Zhongxian stretched his back lazily as he began pondering over a new plan to obtain more concentrated high-tier spirit stone. However, in that moment, he suddenly recalled a certain matter, and his lips began twitching wildly. "I forgot that I promised Hall Master Xing to train his combat masters. Earlier, he said that the combat masters from the other 3 conferred Empire Combat Master Halls would be arriving in 3 days. He had headed right for the Master Teacher Pavilion for his promotion to 7-star Master Teacher right after preparing the training regimes for the combat masters. After getting caught up in an entire string of matters, 4 days had passed in a flash. In other words, the combat masters from the other 3 conferred Empire Combat Master Halls should have arrived by now, and the friendly spar might have already begun. I should rush back to take a look. Swiftly leaving the myriad ant hive nest, Zhongxian realized that the sun was hanging high in the sky. It was already the noon of the 4th day. Back then, Hall Master Xing had told him that if he trained the combat masters well and led them to victory in the friendly spar, he would split half of the reward from the Combat Master Hall headquarters with him. This was a precious source of concentrated high-tier spirit stones for him. No matter what, he needed to witness the exchange with his own eyes. At this point, he could only pray that those fellows had obediently followed his training regime. Otherwise, if they lost, that would be 50 concentrated high-tier spirit stones. Just the thought of it was sufficient to make his heart bleed in pain. Anxious, he rushed all the way toward the Combat Master Hall. In the training hall of the Combat Master Hall, countless combat masters were gathered in the area, their eyes fixated on the dueling platforms in the middle. At the very forefront of the spectator stand, ahead of the crowd gathered in the area, sat 4 elders. One of them was Hall Master Xing. Hall Master Xing, I heard rumors that your combat masters have joined that, what is it called again? Xianxian faction? According to what I have heard, it seems to be an organization from a Tier 1 empire, right? Before the friendly spar had even begun, the other 3 elders had already turned sharp gazes toward Hall Master Xing as they questioned him with deep frowns on their faces. The Combat Master Hall represented the highest fighting prowess in the Master Teacher continent, and yet, the combat masters of the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall had actually lowered themselves to joining a Master Teacher organization of a Tier 1 empire. This was truly inconceivable. It was true that the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall was the weakest of them all, but surely they did not have to lower themselves to such an extent. To band themselves together with a group of ordinary master teachers, they were practically tossing aside the dignity of the combat masters. Yes, that's right, Hall Master Xing replied. The 10,000 men of the Xianxian faction were currently living in the Combat Master Hall. There was no way he could possibly conceal the matter from them at this point. An elder with a goatee harumphed coldly as he glared at Hall Master Xing sharply. I don't want to interfere in the affairs of your Combat Master Hall either, but are you serious? To actually have your combat masters join a Tier 1 empire organization, just what is going through your mind? Does the dignity and honor of the Combat Master Hall mean nothing to you? That was the head of the Chongyuan Empire Combat Master Hall, Zhao Yi. It's not what you all think it is. I concede that the Xianxian faction is a student faction from a Tier 1 empire, but their comprehension of combat is superior even to us combat masters. As Kong Shi once said, learn from the capable, regardless of their standing. Hall Master Xing explained, but he was interjected halfway through his words. Another elder harumphed. Enough. We are not interested in hearing whatever explanation you have. I hope that you can at least get a single slot for the Sword Lagoon of the Chenchong Empire so that you don't embarrass yourselves any further. The head of the Haohai Empire Combat Master Hall, Liu Qinshan. The 3rd elder shook his head. Allow me to give you a word of advice. The Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall might be the weakest of the conferred empires now, but don't test the patience of the headquarters. They could very well call for your closure. When that happens, I don't know how you intend to face your predecessors. The head of the Qianyun Empire Combat Master Hall, Wei Qianshu. Of the 8 great conferred empires, the weakest 4 were namely Chongyuan, Qianyun, Haohai, and Qingyuan. Qingyuan used to be ranked 3rd, but the assault from the otherworldly demonic tribe 20 years ago had been a crushing blow to it, and it had not been able to recover from the devastating damage since then. As such, be it their national power, regional master-teacher pavilion, or combat master hall, unfortunately, they could only be placed in very last place. Seeing that the 3 hall masters were clearly looking down on him, Hall Master Xing frowned in displeasure. "Thank you for your kind advice, but even if our Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall has not recovered from the damage we suffered 20 years ago, we are still making a swift recovery. You won't be let down in the friendly spa later on." Halfway through his words, cheers suddenly erupted behind him. The candidates that would be participating in the friendly spa were making their way into the training hall. "Haha, indeed. I am not let down at all." Zhao Yi burst into laughter upon seeing the candidates from Qingyuan. "Hall Master Xing, has your Combat Master Hall run short of funds? So, this is what the elites of your Combat Master Hall look like, huh?" Wei Qianshu frowned in disapproval. "Run short of funds?" Uncomprehending of what they were saying, Hall Master Xing turned his gaze over to his combat masters, and his eyes nearly bulged out of their sockets. He saw that Shi Hao was still dressed in the clothes he had worn while cleaning the toilet bowls, and he was still equipped with a feather duster in hand. Jiao Tan was still holding onto his fly swatter, Xiao Qin was carrying a bird cage in his hand, Dong Rui had large bumps all over his head. It was as if they were pitiful beggars picked off the street. Caught off guard by the happenings, Hall Master Xing swiftly turned his head toward Division Head Liao. "Division Head Liao, what is going on?" Hall Master Xing, Principal Zhong's training regime was simply too much for them to finish within 3 days. They all carried out their training until the very last moment before rushing over in a hurry, Division Head Liao quickly explained. Zhong Xian's training regime was truly harsh. It was clearly impossible to finish it within 3 days. Division Head Liao could not tell whether the candidates were possessed or brainwashed, but despite the impossible mission that they had been tasked with, the candidates had carried out their training diligently without a single word of complaint. It was only when the friendly spa was about to begin that they had reluctantly halted their training to rush over. Hearing that explanation, a bitter look surfaced on Hall Master Xing's face. Had he known that this would happen, he never would have entrusted the training of the candidates to Zhong Xian. With this, their Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall would surely become the laughingstock of the other conferred Empire Combat Master Hall for many years to come. Cleaning the toilet bowl, swatting flies, capturing birds, leaping off trees. Just what was Zhong Xian up to? Was he really trustworthy? While Hall Master Xing was still staring at the situation before him with a desolate look in his eyes, a shout suddenly sounded from the dueling platform. "I am Ling Xian from the Chongyuan Empire Combat Master Hall. My cultivation is at St. Tu Dan Intermediate Stage. Are there any friends from the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall who would like to spar with me?" A combat master had already leaped onto one of the dueling platforms, and he was staring at Qingyuan's candidates intently. Hall Master Xing clenched his fists tightly. "To challenge us right from the start, they are intending to suppress our morale. There was a proper order to how the friendly spar should have been conducted, and yet, that combat master Ling Xian had leaped up onto the dueling platform to challenge Qingyuan's candidates. That was clearly an intentional act to destroy their confidence right from the start. Furthermore, as the host of the friendly spar, it would make them appear weak if they turned down the challenge. "I'll face you." Jiao Tan leaped onto the dueling platform. Jiao Tan was a genius from the martial arts division, and his cultivation had long reached St. Tu Dan Intermediate Stage. He was the candidate that the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall had chosen for the friendly spar for this cultivation stage. "You!" Seeing the other party's work clothes and the fly swatter in his hands, Ling Xian could not help but burst into laughter. "Very well then, make your move. Let me see the formidable strength of the Qingyuan Empire Combat Masters." Voila! Right after saying those words, he channeled his zhengqi toward his palm, and a deafening rumble reminiscent of thunder echoed from his hands. That is Chongyuan Empire's famous bolt lightning palm. It's said that the palm art is as swift as a bolt of lightning, making it nigh impossible for cultivators of the same tier to withstand it. According to what I know, it's extremely difficult to cultivate as well. Countless geniuses have found themselves completely clueless before it. However, judging from the resounding thunder from Ling Xian's palm, most likely, he has already reached major accomplishment in the battle technique. Major accomplishment. That should be consummation. Ling Xian is said to be the most talented individual of Chongyuan Empire Combat Master Hall's martial arts division, and despite having yet to reach his 30s, he has already broken several records and successfully cultivated 34 battle techniques to date. He's so formidable. Such discussions could be heard throughout the crowd. However, seemingly oblivious to the words of the crowd, Jiao Tan calmly walked up to Ling Xian with the same fly swatter in his hand. Chapter 1197. Pa Pa Pa. That bamboo fly swatter is delicate and powerless, and yet, he intends to use it to deal with Ling Xian's bolt lightning palm? Is there something wrong with that fellow's head? Jiao Tan is the #1 genius of the martial arts division, and his comprehension of battle techniques has reached an incredible height as well. In normal circumstances, even if he is no match for Ling Xian, he would at least be able to put up a spectacular fight. But to walk up with a fly swatter in hand, is he out of his mind? Seeing how Jiao Tan was acting, everyone was dumbfounded. Hall Master Xing and Division Head Liao felt so crazed that they wanted to tear out all their hair on the spot. They had placed so much hope in Jiao Tan, and yet, after a few days of undergoing Zhong Xian's training regime, he was suddenly off his rockers. It would have been tolerable if Jiao Tan had chosen to wield an ordinary sword, a chair, or even a brick. A fly swatter was flexible and fragile, making it unsuitable to exert strength through it. To face Ling Xian with such a weapon was practically committing suicide. Thinking that Jiao Tan was making light of him, Ling Xian's face reddened in fury. "Are you sure you want to face me with that?" Even though it was just a friendly spar, it was still a formal event. It should have been a solemn and dignified occasion, and yet, the other party was actually insulting him by facing him with a fly swatter. That was blatant humiliation toward him. Jiao Tan nodded earnestly. "Yuan. If you think that you are disadvantaged, you can wield a weapon if you want. There's no need to hold back. You." Jiao Tan's words caused a mini explosion in Ling Xian's mind, and he clenched his jaws so tightly together that his teeth nearly chipped. Waving his hands furiously, he harumphed. "There's no need for that. I'll use my palms to teach you a lesson and make your Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall understand the gap between us. No matter how hard you work, you will never be able to catch up to us." Huala. Right after saying those words, with a thunderous roar, his palm shot forth with a speed as swift as a streak of lightning. In the blink of an eye, his lightning-like aura permeated the entire dueling platform. It felt as if the slightest wrong move would bring a crushing blow, seemingly forcing Jiao Tan into a cornered situation. "I'll look forward to it then," Jiao Tan replied leisurely before raising the fly swatter in his hand. With a swift motion, he struck the lightning before his eyes. "You're seeking death." Seeing that the other party obstinately wanted to face him with a fly swatter, Ling Xian gritted his teeth furiously as his palm flew toward Jiao Tan. He was going to use his full strength to inflict a crushing defeat upon the other party so as to let the other party understand what a true expert was. Hall Master Zhao Yi shook his head and said, "There's no need to watch any further. The victor has already been decided." Indeed. An aura suffused with lightning, a palm overflowing with strength. Even though Ling Xian is only a Saint 2 Dan cultivator, his might is more than sufficient to overwhelm any Saint 3 Dan cultivator. Even a half-saint weapon could be crushed into pieces before his bolt lightning palm. There is no way that fellow will be able to match Ling Xian with just a bamboo fly swatter. Hall Master Liu Qinshan sighed. From the looks of it, it seems like the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall won't be able to obtain a single slot. Hall Master Wei Qianshu sneered coldly. However, before he could finish his words, a "pa" suddenly echoed resoundingly throughout the training hall. Taken aback, the three hall masters quickly turned their gazes back to the dueling platform, only to see that before Ling Xian's bolt lightning palm could reach Jiao Tan, a fly swatter had struck his face squarely, leaving a dense congregation of red lines in its wake. "Ah, I'll kill you." Ling Xian had clearly not expected the other party's fly swatter to move so swiftly as to slap him right before everyone else. Seething with rage, He dashed forward and thrust another palm forward. Pa! But again, before his palm could connect, another crisp echo sounded throughout the entire training hall. Once more, the fly swatter had struck his face. Aye! At this moment, Ling Xian really felt as if his mind would blow up. With a swift step, his silhouette flickered, and 5 illusory figures appeared on the dueling platform, making it difficult for one to discern which was true and which was false. As a combat master, he had been through plenty of battles. Even though he felt humiliated by the 2 consecutive slaps, he knew better than to allow his emotions to dictate his actions. While his opponent was dressed in a bizarre get-up, it was apparent at this point that he possessed superior fighting prowess. Thus, he immediately executed his strongest movement technique. Artful Steps of 7 Spectre. It was a Saint intermediate tier battle technique, and if perfectly executed, it could generate 7 lifelike illusions of 1 to confound one's opponent. While its power was beneath that of the Bolt Lightning Palm, its reputation far exceeded the latter. Ever since he successfully mastered the technique, there had been none who had been able to break his Artful Steps of 7 Spectre through skill. 5 illusions. He has already refined his Artful Steps of 7 Spectre to an incredible level, such that even I can't accurately discern his true figure within the illusions. Hall Master Zhao Yi remarked while stroking his beard. But once again, before he could finish his words, Pa! And once again, the fly swatter struck Ling Xian's face squarely. Flying into a frenzy, Ling Xian hastened his footsteps, making his movements even more indiscernible to the eye. Pa! 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 But even so, 3 consecutive strikes still landed accurately on Ling Xian's face. It was as if Zhao Tan could see right through the illusions. Seeing how his comrade was being slapped time and time again without laying a single finger on his opponent's body, a combat master from Chongyuan Empire could not hold himself back any longer and shouted, Ling Xian, since he is using a weapon, use your sword too. All right. Knowing that the fellow before him was a tough nut to crack, Ling Xian flicked his wrist and whipped out a Saint low-tier sword. Flicking the sword furiously, a relentless barrage of sword chi burst forth, instantly covering the entire dueling platform. Freezing Rain Sword Intent. That's the unique sword intent that Ling Xian comprehended while standing under the winter rain when he was 23. No one has ever succeeded in dodging it before. Hall Master Zhao Yi commented proudly, but once again, before he could finish his words, Zhao Tan, who was surrounded by the barrage of sword chi, raised his fly swatter nonchalantly and Pa! 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 Yet another 3 consecutive slaps. At this point, Ling Xian's face was already swollen red from all the slapping. Huala! Furious, Ling Xian drove his sword forward and sent sword arts of all kinds toward Zhao Tan. However, Zhao Tan easily avoided all of Ling Xian's attacks as if a butterfly flitting through a field of flowers. And more importantly, his fly swatter never stopped moving throughout. Pa! 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 It was a steady and rhythmic melody, sounding surprisingly like an orchestra. This. The 3 hall masters widened their eyes in disbelief, unable to believe what they were seeing. Even Hall Master Xing, Division Head Liao, and the others could not process what exactly was going on. They had witnessed Zhong Xian's training regime with their own eyes, and they had nearly been convinced that it was a prank. And yet, how could Zhao Tan undergo such a huge change, as if a caterpillar metamorphosed into a butterfly? Incredible. I never thought that fly swatters would make such powerful weapon. That's only because of Zhao Tan's exceptional control. I saw him hunting down flies inside the toilet, and he could even accurately strike a fly's front legs without hurting the rest of its body. What? Is that true? Given how small and nimble flies are, is it really possible to do it to such an extent? If that's really true, the precision of his control is truly frightening. A couple of Qingyuan combat masters discussed as they watched the duel. Hearing the conversation among the combat masters, Division Head Liao smacked his thigh and exclaimed in realization, I get it now. Division Head Wei turned his head and asked, what did you get? Zhao Tan is a genius of our martial arts division, Division Head Liao explained, but due to the huge variety of battle techniques he has cultivated, he isn't focused in any of them, and this has prevented him from drawing out his full fighting prowess. It might seem nonsensical for Principal Zhong to have instructed him to hunt down flies, But there's actually a deeper meaning behind it. Every single fly moves in a unique trajectory, and in order to strike it accurately, one has to closely observe its movements and predict it in advance. More importantly, this training served to enhance his focus and rid his recklessness. With greater focus, he is now able to immerse himself into the battle technique he is executing and bring forth its maximum strength. This division head Wei fell into deep thought. That did seem to make sense. As a genius of the martial arts school, Jiao Tan was an extremely proud individual. He would surely find hunting down flies to be a deeply demeaning and unengaging task. However, if he could overcome this part of himself, his state of mind could be elevated to greater heights, and this would be beneficial in his execution of battle techniques as well. It was due to his incredible focus that no matter how Ling Xian altered his movements, he was unable to escape Jiao Tan's swatter. Since he was even able to accurately strike a fly's legs, there was no reason he could not evade and strike something as big as a human. Pa 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 pa. The sound gradually crescendoed. Stop. I admit defeat. It did not take long before Ling Xian had used all of his battle techniques, and yet, he did not even manage to nick the other party's body. Realizing that it was impossible for him to win, he could only surrender miserably. At this moment, his face resembled nothing like a human's. It was swollen so badly that it resembled a donut. Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall's Jiao Tan is the victor. Since Ling Xian had already admitted defeat, the referee could only award the victory to Jiao Tan. Huala. A well-built young man leaped onto the stage. I am Bai Zun from the Qianyun Empire Combat Master Hall. My cultivation is at St. Tu Dan Primary Stage, and I would like to challenge the experts of the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall as well. My cultivation is at St. Tu Dan Primary Stage as well. I'll be your opponent, Shihao said as he walked onto the stage. Bai Zun is the genius of Qianyun Empire Combat Master Hall's fist division. His steel fists are known to be invincible among his peers. I don't think that cleaner stands much of a chance against him. Cough cough, he's not a cleaner. He's actually the genius of our inner breath division, Shihao. As the duo walked up the stage, the combat masters of both combat master halls could not help but clench their fists nervously. Hall Master Xing, how is the strength of this combat master of yours? Hall Master Liu Qinshan asked curiously. Just a moment ago, everyone had thought that the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall had already given up on themselves, but the overwhelming prowess that Jiao Tan had displayed had really opened their eyes. At this point, it would have been truly foolish of them to continue underestimating the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall. I don't know either. Hall Master Xing shook his head. Principal Zhong's training regime was simply too bizarre. Even someone as experienced in combat as him could not comprehend the rationale behind it at all. To instruct the proud genius of the Inner Breath Hall to clean the toilet bowls throughout the Inner Breath division. If things went wrong, Shihao's fighting prowess might even decline instead. It's impossible for that lad to beat Bai Zun, the head of the Qianyun Empire Combat Master Hall, Wei Qianshu, remarked proudly. I have absolute confidence in him. He's my direct disciple, and there has never been anyone who could match him in the field of fist arts. There's just no way your combat master will be able to win against him. Hoo. While the hall masters were chatting, the battle on the dueling platform had already begun. With the opportunity to train in the Sword Lagoon of the Qianchong Empire on the line, Bai Zun had no intention of holding back at all. From the very start, he threw out a fist with his full strength harnessed in it. Just as the fist was about to strike Shihao, the latter suddenly raised his hand and scraped the other party's face forcefully, reminiscent of how he had scraped the toilet bowls with his feather duster throughout the Combat Master Hall over the past 3 days. Seeing this, flames of fury lit up in Bai Zun's eyes. With a furious roar, he sent another powerful fist forward. The fist wielded astounding might that caused a deafening sonic boom. However, before it could reach Shihao, the latter raised his hand once more and swiped Shihao's face forcefully, digging out a huge lump of dirt while doing it. How long has it been since you last washed your face? Shihao disdainfully wiped his hand on his shirt. Bai Zun. With a livid expression, Bai Zun swiftly stepped back and equipped his knuckle duster before charging forward once more. "You bastard, I'll kill you." The combat masters of the fist division relied on knuckle dusters to draw forth greater strength from their fist arts. On the other hand, seeing that his opponent had drawn his weapon, Shahao also unhesitatingly flicked his wrist, and a feather duster appeared in his hand. Glacier smashing fist. With a furious bellow, a brilliant light flashed from the knuckle duster, and Bai Zun thrust his fist forward furiously, seemingly intending to utterly destroy the figure before him. But just as the fist was shooting forward, still a distance away from connecting, Bai Zun suddenly saw something flying toward him with a speed reminiscent of a streak of lightning. Before he could process what was going on, a feather duster had already been stuffed into his mouth before swishing around. In an instant, a harmony of indescribable flavors filled his mouth. Chapter 1198, Shenxian Faction. Luo Chichi Shahao possesses an incredible zhenqi capacity, so relying on his strength, he prefers to overwhelm his opponent with his sheer might. While it allows him to defeat weaker opponents easily, it puts him at a critical advantage against opponents who are equal or stronger than him. His careless use of zhenqi would only cause him to run out of strength first, so it was not a particularly wise fighting style, Division Head Liao remarked hoarsely as he watched the duel unblinkingly. A feather duster is fragile, and an excessive use of strength could easily cause it to break. By instructing Shahao to clean toilet bowls with that, he was trying to temper Shahao's use of strength, granting him a finer control over his zhenqi. Over the past 3 days, he has scrubbed tens of thousands of toilet bowls diligently, and his effort has not gone to waste. It's clear that his use of zhenqi has become more refined, and his execution of strength is also more controlled. It's these two factors that allowed him to achieve victory easily. As for Xiao Qin, he has an impatient personality. As such, the training regime he was put under, capturing birds, served to temper his patience. Furthermore, the agility of birds makes them difficult to deal with, so the training further refined his dexterity too. Lu Jianling has a cowardly personality, so by having him confess to everyone he meets, teasing men even, he was able to embolden his guts and temper his state of mind. Don't think that confidence is of little importance just because of how vague it sounds. It can actually allow a person to make decisions more decisively, granting him a significant boost in his fighting prowess. Even though Dong Rui is a genius from the Guardian Division, the defenses of his head were slightly lacking. Through a continuous cycle of falling from a tree, the defensive ability of his head could be tempered. At the same time, this also served to build his courage. If he could willingly embrace pain, he would be able to charge fearlessly into hordes of enemies and display his true prowess. The crux of the Guardian Division lies in their invincible physical prowess. If they cower in face of the enemy, there would be no way they could bring out their full strength. As for Chen Xiaoxiu, with each passing battle, the excited gleam in Division Head Liao's eyes grew brighter and brighter. In just a few moments, 10 matches had already passed. Everyone had thought that the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall would perform below average this time around, but who knew that every single one of them would successfully clinch victory, not losing even a single round. It was only in this moment that it dawned on them how fearsome Zhong Xian's training regime was. He managed to see through the flaws of all 20 candidates with a look and tailor a training regime suited to their need. Scrubbing toilet bowls, swatting flies, capturing birds. All of those may seem simple, but there was a deeper meaning to each of those actions, allowing the candidates to grasp a more profound interpretation of combat. Hall Master Xing's eyes grew brighter and brighter as he began to understand the rationale behind Zhong Xian's training regime. He had been utterly dumbfounded when he first saw the training regime, and he had thought that Zhong Xian was just fooling around. However, after seeing the performance of Qingyuan's candidates, he realized that the other party's training regime was truly spot on. Combat masters were constantly tempering their skills every single day, and while their diligence allowed them to sharpen their combat prowess to levels far exceeding that of ordinary master teachers, it had also led to a rigidity in their combat senses and even reflexes. Clearly, it was infeasible to overthrow what they had learned within just 3 short days. As such, Zhong Xian had made them carry out activities that ordinary humans would do so as to loosen their state of mind, making it easier for them their mind and body to absorb new things. Through having them repeat the actions again and again, the training they carried out was eventually integrated into part of their instincts as well. It was just like how Hao used his hands to scrub the other party's face viciously. In truth, he was not doing it intentionally. Rather, it was a habit he had unintentionally cultivated from 3 days of relentlessly scrubbing toilet bowls. I really should have more confidence in Principal Zhong and them. Hall Master Xing shook his head with a bitter smile. He had been deeply worried that their candidates would stand no chance against the geniuses from the other combat master halls after undergoing such a nonsensical training regime, but it seemed like Zhong Xian had the situation tightly in his grasp all along. It was no wonder he was even relaxed enough to head off to the master-teacher pavilion, staying out for the entire 3 days. From the looks of it now, it was apparent that he had absolute confidence in the training regimes he had assigned to the candidate. The minds of the true experts were truly different from ordinary folk like them. In an instant, Zhong Xian's position in Hall Master Xing's heart had been elevated to a greater height. While Hall Master Xing was reveling in the overwhelming prowess his candidates were showing, the other 3 Hall Masters, whose chins had been tilted up in disdain earlier, were panicking over the unexpected situation. They never could have imagined that that bunch of unkempt, beggar-like combat masters would actually wield such tremendous strength. The combat masters whom they had gone through much effort to find and groom had actually turned out to be no match for them at all. It was an utter annihilation. What the heck was this? Unable to take it any longer, Hall Master Zhao Yi turned to Hall Master Xing and asked, "Hall Master Xing, what is going on with your combat masters?" Long years of competition between both combat master halls had granted both sides a clear grasp over the strength of the other. Even if the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall had made massive improvements over the past few years, it still did not make sense that all of their candidates would actually lose. Something was clearly off. But regardless of what it was, there was one thing that was certain: the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall was no longer the weakling it had once been. To be honest, 3 days ago, the fighting prowess of my candidates was still beneath that of the geniuses from your combat master halls. It was due to special last-minute training that they managed to metamorphose into the experts that you see now. Hall Master Xing revealed the truth. Special training? They managed to attain such strength just by undergoing special last-minute training? How in the world can that possibly be true? 3 days wouldn't even be sufficient to master the simplest Saint-tier battle technique. The 3 Hall Masters found Hall Master Xing's words inconceivable. Other cultivators often used decades as a unit of measurement of how long they have trained. 3 days. What the hell could one possibly do in 3 days? It would probably pass in a flash before one could even fully digest the principles behind a Saint intermediate tier battle technique. I understand your skepticism. I also thought that it was impossible as well, but the leader of the Shenzhen faction that I told you about earlier specially designed training regimes tailored to resolve their individual flaws. It was thanks to those that they were able to improve at such an astounding pace. Hall Master Xing replied with a hint of pride in his voice. The leader of the Shenzhen faction? The 3 Hall Masters glanced at one another in bewilderment. Indeed. Hall Master Xing nodded. He might be from a Tier 1 empire, but his comprehension of combat and battle techniques has already reached a realm that I can hardly fathom. It's due to that reason that I allowed our combat masters join to the Shenzhen faction. Through their expertise, I hope to bring the strength of our combat master hall to greater height. A master teacher from a Tier 1 empire was able to grant your candidates the strength to achieve a complete victory in our friendly spar through just 3 days of teaching? Despite Hall Master Xing's explanation, the other Hall Masters still found the matter a little doubtful. Voila! At that moment, a commotion suddenly broke out on the dueling platform, and countless agitated shouts echoed from the spectators' stand. Raising their heads, the Hall Masters saw that the victor of the final match had been decided. All 60 candidates from their 3 combat master halls had been defeated. In other words, the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall had managed to win all 20 slots to the Qianchong Empire's Sword Lagoon for themselves. The eyelids of the 3 Hall Masters twitched wildly. They really could not accept such an outcome. They had thought that they would be able to claim roughly 6 slots each at the very least, but who could have imagined that the friendly spar would end with them obtaining none at all? It was truly a complete defeat for them. However, knowing that the results were already decided, the 3 hall masters could only sigh deeply and reluctantly accept it. A moment later, Hall Master Wei Chenshu asked, "Where is the leader of the Shenqian faction? Can you bring us to meet him? I would like to meet the man whom you are full of praise for." "He isn't in the Combat Master Hall at the moment," Hall Master Xing replied. According to the news he had heard, Zhongxian had gone off to the Master Teacher Pavilion to take his 7-star Master Teacher examination, so it would not be appropriate for him to interrupt the young man at this moment. "He isn't in the Combat Master Hall? Since that's the case, can you take us to the Shenqian faction to take a look?" Hall Master Zhao Yi asked. "I am interested to see just what kind of capability that Tier 1 Empire organization holds that you would even go to the extent of seeking their assistance." This. Hall Master Xing hesitated for a moment, but recalling how the other 3 hall masters had treated him prior to the duel, he eventually relented. "All right then. It was no big deal to take them to the Shenqian faction to take a look." Besides, based on what he recalled, the members of the Shenqian faction were also very welcoming toward combat masters. After all, they were the perfect cannon fodder for them to test their skills on. Thus, Hall Master Xing stood up and led the other 3 hall masters toward the accommodation of the Shenqian faction. Not too long later, he saw a young lady walking in his direction. Hall Master Xing clasped his fist and said, "Lady Chichi, greetings. Allow me to introduce to you. These 3 are the heads of the Chongyuan, Chenyun, and Haohai Empire Combat Master Halls respectively. They are interested in having an exchange with the Shenqian faction, so may I know if now is a convenient time?" He recognized the young lady before him. She was the strongest expert of the Shenqian faction, Luo Chichi. In just a few days of absence, the young lady seemed to have made some advancement in her cultivation, rising from Saint 1 Dan Pinnacle to Saint 2 Dan Primary Stage. "An exchange?" Luo Chichi glanced at the trio beside Hall Master Xing and smiled. "Sure. Suppress your cultivation to my level and come at me all at once." This. Hearing the other party asking them to come at her all at once, Hall Master Zhao Yi frowned in displeasure. "Young lady, we are the heads of our regional combat master hall, leaving Aperture Realm experts. Do you think that you will be able to match us just because we have suppressed out cultivation?" Hall Master Wei Chenshu shook his head in disapproval. "Without a doubt, you are a talented individual to be able to attain such strength at your age. However, that is no reason for you to act with such conceit. When we were your age, we were able to match 10 cultivators of the same cultivation realm easily. Even though we have already grown old, I believe that we still have more than enough in us to subdue a young lass like you." Hall Master Liu Qinshan frowned. "Give it a try then," Luo Chichi replied with a leisure smile. "Since Hall Master Xing was full of praise for the Shenqian faction, allow me to experience your incredible strength for myself." Seeing how lightly the young lady was taking them, Hall Master Zhao Yi shook his head. He took a step forward while suppressing his cultivation to Saint 2 Dan Primary Stage. The other 2 also suppressed their cultivation as well. Who? With a powerful step, Hall Master Zhao Yi appeared before Luo Chichi in an instant. As if a massive dragon had risen from the ocean, his presence suddenly felt extremely heavy and powerful, compelling others to bow before him. Even though he had already suppressed his cultivation, he was still a leaving Aperture Realm expert. The overwhelming strength of his primordial spirit was able to collapse the mental resilience of any Saint 2 Dan cultivator easily, rendering the other party completely helpless. Heh. As if unfazed by the pressure from Hall Master Zhao Yi, Luo Chichi also made her move. She raised her palm and thrust it forward forcefully, and astonishingly, it dispelled the might of Hall Master Zhao Yi's assault in an instant. Hall Master Zhao Yi could not help but narrow his eyes in shock. In a clash between fellow experts, one move was all it took to gauge the other party's strength. From that move, he realized that the young lady, when at the same cultivation realm, was actually even stronger than him. That explained why she was able to act so haughtily despite learning of their identities. Humph. Hall Master Zhao Yi's expression turned grim, and the previous disdain in his eyes disappeared without a trace. He executed a movement technique and darted forward with astounding speed, wanting to catch the young lady off guard and nab her. However, before he could reach her, her figure suddenly appeared before Hall Masters Wei Qianshu and Liu Qinshan, and she thrust her palms at the both of them simultaneously. Just as she had said earlier, she would deal with the three of them at once. Boom boom. Under the young lady's powerful assault, the other two Hall Masters had no choice but to join the fray as well. Thus, the battle became 3 against 1. Peeper, peeper, peeper. 10 breaths later, Hall Master Zhao Yi's face had already reddened from exhaustion. There were 2 clear palm prints on his chest, but only his clothes were ripped. The attacks did not deal any considerable external or internal injuries to him. Clearly, the young lady had gone easy on him. 20 breaths later, Hall Masters Wei Qianshu and Liu Qinshan were forced to retreat several steps in a fluster. A stifling sensation choked up their chests, rendering them unable to speak. The trio clasped their fists simultaneously and bowed. We have lost. Despite collaborating with one another, they were still unable to defeat the young lady before them. They never would have believed such a thing to be possible in the past, but with it happening right before their eyes, there was no way they could deny it anymore. Furthermore, it was apparent that the young lady had gone easy on them. Otherwise, every one of them would have been severely wounded. As stifled as Hall Master Zhao Yi felt from his defeat, he had to concede that the strength wielded by the young lady was truly extraordinary. Out of curiosity, he could not help but ask, "May I know how I should address you?" The least he could do was to find out the name of the person who had defeated him. On the other hand, the young lady placed her hands behind her back and tilted her chin upward. A faint smile surfaced on her lips, and in an instant, it felt as if a field of flowers had blossomed. Xianxian Faction, Luo Chichi. Chapter 1199 Decree of the Progeny of Komba Luo Chichi. The trio etched the name into the depths of their hearts. As the heads of their regional combat master halls, they were existences who were looked up to by countless combat masters, revered for the overwhelming strength they wielded. Even within the Leaving Aperture realm, there was nearly no one who was a match for them. Yet, they were not a match for the young lady at all. This went to show the young lady's astounding prowess. May I know if Lady Chichi is interested in joining our Chongyuan Empire Combat Master Hall? Hall Master Zhao Yi stepped forward and clasped his fist. I am not interested, Luo Chichi replied curtly. If she was truly interested in joining the Combat Master Hall, she would have long taken the examination for it. There was no need for her to have dragged it out till now. And to be honest, she was only interested in staying by her teacher's side at the moment. If only she could, she would willingly stay with him until the end of time. Hearing the other party's unhesitating rejection, Hall Master Zhao Yi knew that it would be impossible for him to convince the young lady otherwise, so he could only give up with a bitter smile. Just as he was about to continue speaking, a resounding horn reminiscent of the roar of thunder reverberated deafeningly throughout the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall. It was so loud that it felt as if it would tear through even the heavens. The sound was coming from the very heart of the Combat Master Hall, the Great Combat Master Atrium. It's the Combat Master Assembly Decree. The eyes of the 4 Hall Masters widened in astonishment. The Combat Master Hall was in charge of maintaining the security of the region, and for that purpose, they devoted most of their time to training and cultivating. However, once the horn was blown, all combat masters that heard the sound had to assemble immediately. Even the slightest delay would not be tolerated. Let's head over. Knowing that this was not the time to speak, they hurriedly rushed over to the Great Combat Master Atrium. The fact that the horn had been blown meant that something major had occurred. In the blink of an eye, they arrived at the concourse right before the Great Combat Master Atrium. At this moment, all the combat masters in the Qingyuan Empire had assembled in the area. With grim expressions, they stood upright in neat rows, as if soldiers awaiting their commands. Hula! Right after the 4 Hall Masters landed at the very forefront of the crowd, a powerful energy suddenly rippled in the Great Combat Master Atrium, forming a massive screen in midair. It's news from the headquarters. Upon seeing this, Hall Master Xing and the others heaved a sigh of relief. They had been worrying that there had been an invasion and that they would have to march onto the battlefield. Fortunately, That did not seem to be the case. If it was a war, the headquarters would have sent a command straight into their minds and had them set forth as soon as possible. They would not have gone to the trouble of producing this massive screen. Boom. While the 4 hall masters were trying to deduce what was going on, the voice of an elder suddenly sounded from the massive screen, echoing in the hearts of every single combat master present. The candidate that the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall nominated, Zheng Yang, has successfully cleared the Dragon Gate formation, and I hereby declare him the progeny of combat of our Combat Master Hall. Hula. Following which, a silhouette gradually surfaced on the massive screen. It was a young man holding a spear in his hand. He commanded a sharp aura that felt as if it would pierce through the heavens. The current Zheng Yang looked much keener than before. Under Zhong Xian's tutelage, he had already been extremely formidable, but having never experienced the cruelty and the bloodshed from life-and-death battles, it was inevitable that he would appear a little immature. However, at this moment, the presence that he commanded was formidable, and it exerted immense pressure on those before him. It felt as if the sharp blade of a dagger was pressed on their skin, threatening to part their skin and flesh. Progeny of combat. Hall masters Zhao Yi, Wei Qianshu, and Lin Qinshan narrowed their eyes in astonishment, and their bodies froze on the spot. It had been 300 years since the passing of the previous progeny of combat of the Combat Master Hall. They were well aware of the significance behind this declaration. They had thought that the Qingyuan Empire was just a declining empire that would soon fall out of its ranks and that its Combat Master Hall had fallen into a spiral of frailty. Yet, who would have thought that a combat master from their ranks would actually succeed in clearing the Dragon Gate formation and become the next progeny of combat? Putting the rest aside, just the gratitude of nomination was more than enough for them to rise to unprecedented heights. That realization left the trio with a hoarseness at the back of their throats, and they found themselves unable to speak a single word. They had still been lamenting their bad luck from being unable to claim a single slot from the friendly spa, but after witnessing the sight before them, they realized that it had not been bad luck at all. From the very start, the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall wielded strength far exceeding theirs. At the same time, Hall Master Xing could not help but narrow his eyes either. In truth, when he sent Zheng Yang over to the Combat Master Hall headquarters, he did not bear much hope for success. But contrary to his expectations, the young man really managed to pull it off. Progeny of combat. That was the man who would become the next head of the entire Combat Master Hall, the future combat god of the Master Teacher continent. And that man had actually come from their branch, Wang. While he was still overwhelmed by emotions from that realization, the sight on the screen suddenly changed as Zheng Yang swept his spear toward a massive dragon ahead of him. This is challenging the Dragon Gate formation, Hall Master Xing remarked. In order to become the progeny of combat, one had to first clear the Dragon Gate formation. The Dragon Gate formation was divided into 3 stages: Dragon's Tail, Dragon's Back, and Dragon's Head. In every single stage, the challenger would have to face 3 challengers with consecutively ascending cultivation stage, ranging from an equivalent cultivation to 8 cultivation stages higher. Furthermore, the fighting prowess of the 3 cultivators was further enhanced by the Dragon Gate formation, making it extremely difficult to defeat them. It was for this reason that no one had cleared the Dragon Gate formation in the past 300 years. The headquarters are playing the recording of the progeny of combat clearing the Dragon Gate formation to all combat masters in order to muster their morale through the strength of the new progeny of combat, as well as to show them that the trial was carried out fair. The sight was recorded using the record crystal in the headquarters, and naturally, it was played to the combat masters for a reason. The intent was clear as well. It was to force all the combat masters to acknowledge the strength of the progeny of combat, thus building up authority and respect for him. This was a necessary procedure for the progeny of combat to lead the Combat Master Hall in the future. Hula. While Hall Master Xing was pondering over the matter, he saw Zheng Yang making his way over to the dragon's tail. His spear shot forth with a speed so swift that it was nearly indiscernible, flying forth as if a streak of lightning. Too strong. Even though it was only a video, Hall Master Xing still could not help but shudder upon seeing the speed of the spear. If he were to face the progeny of combat at the same cultivation realm, There was no doubt that the spear would have pierced through his throat before he could even respond. But before this despairing strength, the combat masters in the dragon's tail actually managed to react to the spear. They swiftly moved to meet Zheng Yang's spear with their own, and a powerful shockwave burst into the surroundings. Despite having his assault foiled, Zheng Yang did not show the slightest hint of apprehension. He took a leisure step forward, and despite his light movement, for some reason, his body still moved at an exceptional speed. In the blink of an eye, he was already standing before one of the combat masters. Peng! With a quick flick of his spear, he sent the combat master flying out of the field. After which, he continued executing his spear art relentlessly toward the two remaining combat masters, overpowering them swiftly. In just 3 moves, the both of them were subdued as well. With this, the dragon's tail had fallen. What swift spearmanship! The combat masters in the concourse could not help but tighten their fists in agitation. At the same time, the eyes of the combat masters from the martial arts division lit up as they watched the fight. All in all, Zheng Yang had used 5 moves to deal with the dragon's tail. Even though it appeared that he had only used the most straightforward movements, a pierce and a sweep, they had been infused with the very essence of spearmanship, making it extremely difficult to guard against them. Even if they were to devote their entire lives to the spearmanship, they could not see themselves pulling off the same spear that Zheng Yang had used. However, this was not the end of the Dragon Gate formation yet. The dragon's tail could only be said to be the starter, and there was still the dragon's back and dragon's head to go. The trio on the dragon's back had a cultivation of 3, 4, and 5 cultivation stages higher than Zheng Yang. Similarly, it did not take too long for Zheng Yang to subdue them. He met with slight difficulties in the midst of doing so, but it did not pose too much of a problem. He has used 17 moves in total. Hall Master Xing exclaimed in shock. After clearing the dragon's back, Zheng Yang moved on to the dragon's head. The 3 cultivators in the dragon's head were of 6, 7, and 8 cultivation stages stronger than him. The moment they made a move, a powerful gale blew furiously in the surroundings as overwhelming auras crushed down in the area. It was as if a true dragon had surfaced in the area, causing ominous clouds to gather in the sky, as if the entire world was cowering in fear before its might. On the other hand, Zheng Yang seemed like a withered leaf floating on the surface of a raging ocean. It seemed as if he would be submerged under the furious might of the 3 cultivators, but somehow, he still managed to remain firmly afloat. Peng! 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 Sometime later, the clouds finally scattered, and Zheng Yang's figure surfaced once more. He was panting heavily, and beads of sweat trickled relentlessly down his forehead. He was severely wounded. There were many blooded gouges all over his body. However, his 3 opponents were lying unconscious on the floor, leaving him the only one standing on the field. Without a doubt, he had successfully cleared the dragon's head trial as well. Now, for the final dragon's pearl. Unlike the simplified Dragon Gate formation, the complete Dragon Gate formation in the Combat Master Hall headquarters contained a dragon's pearl as well, and it was also known to be the most difficult phase of the entire trial. Over the past 300 years, there had been around 10 cultivators who were able to clear the simplified Dragon's Gate formation, but not a single one of them had managed to clear the dragon's pearl. Standing on the spot, Zheng Yang took in a few deep breaths to recuperate slightly from his wounds before proceeding forward. Blood was still trickling down from his wounds, leaving a crimson trail behind him. Despite so, his footsteps were firm and steady. It was as if there was some kind of faith that granted him the courage to march on fearlessly, not cowering even in the face of death. Boom, boom, boom. Soon, a cultivator stood before him, the guardian of the dragon's pearl. Without any hesitation, the duo began clashing with one another. The guardian of the dragon's pearl was an incredibly powerful cultivator. Every blow of his harnessed immense strength that seemed to warp even space itself, and halfway into the battle, Zheng Yang's spear even broke in a direct clash against the guardian. Nevertheless, Zheng Yang did not give up. Fist art, movement art, leg art. He utilized every kind of technique at his disposal, executing profound moves one after another. Eventually, through utilizing his body as a spear, he successfully breached the cultivator's defense and achieved victory. 388 blows. It really isn't easy to become the progeny of combat, Hall Master Xing remarked. Even though Zheng Yang had managed to defeat the Dragon's Pearl in the end, he had also come to the very limits of his body. At this point, there was not a single unwounded patch of skin on his body, and his body was trembling weakly. However, he still remained firmly standing. Completely astounded by the sight before them, all the combat masters fell silent. They had a feeling that they would never be able to erase this sight from their minds. To be honest, if they had been in Zheng Yang's place, they would have already given up at the dragon's back. This had nothing to do with their strength but their willpower. It was as if Zheng Yang carried an unwavering faith within him. No matter how many gorges one pierced through him, he still firmly stood his ground, determined to defeat his opponent. This undying spirit was what set them apart from him. I, Zheng Yang, was only an ordinary spear practitioner from the humble Tianqian kingdom. The recording cut off from the Dragon Gate formation, and when Zheng Yang appeared once more, he was already cleaned up, and his wounds had recovered as well. It's the blessing of the heavens that I met my teacher. Not only did he impart the strongest spearmanship to me, he also taught me important values, correcting me patiently whenever I stray off from the path. It's thanks to his guidance that I was able to become the person I am today. In cultivation, the aim is not only to cultivate one's strength, but more importantly, to cultivate one's character. The way of the spear is but a means to that. The reason I was able to become the progeny of combat isn't due to strength but the principles, values, and aims that I hold on to dearly. I hope that all of you will come to comprehend this someday. Last but not least, I shall make my first decree as the progeny of combat. The crowd in the Combat Master Hall swiftly got to their knees and clasped their fists. We will humbly listen to the decree of the progeny of combat. In the absence of the Hall Master, the progeny of combat decree was effectively the Hall Master decree, an order that all combat masters had to comply to unconditionally. I am deeply indebted to my teacher. Without him, there would be no me. Thus, I hereby order everyone in the Combat Master Hall, regardless of strength or position, to honor and respect him as a teacher. Yes. A resounding response sounded from the crowd. The teacher of the progeny of combat was effectively the teacher of the entire Combat Master Hall. Anyone who dared disrespect him would be disrespecting the entire Combat Master Hall as well. My teacher has always been humble, so no one is to speak of his identity outside of the Combat Master Hall. Anyone who dares leak any detail about him shall be executed on the spot. Understood. Zheng Yang commanded authoritatively. Yes, the crowd replied thunderingly. Very well. Etch the name of my teacher into your minds lest you cross him. My teacher is Zhong Xian. Chapter 1200, Spirit Reinforcing Pill Zhong Xian? Hall Master Zhao Yi repeated the name under his breath. Considering how much respect the progeny of combat had for his teacher, he would have to make sure to treat the other party respectfully in the future. At this moment, he suddenly caught sight of a young man flying over from afar and landing in the middle of the concourse. Placing his hands behind him, the young man looked at the progeny of combat on the screen with complex emotions in his eyes. Hall Master Xing, is that person a combat master from your Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall? Hall Master Zhao Yi narrowed his eyes in rage. It's one thing for him to arrive so late despite the sounding of the Combat Master Assembly decree, but how dare he not kneel to receive the decree of the progeny of combat? Is this the kind of discipline a combat master should have? It was just a moment ago that the progeny of combat had made his decree, so it was only right for all combat masters to kneel and humbly receive his decree. And yet, that young man arrogantly dared to remain standing in the middle of the concourse. This was truly unacceptable. Ah, he isn't a combat master from our Combat Master Hall. He's the person whom I told you about, the head of the Shenzhen faction, the principal of the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy, Zhong. Hall Master Zhao, where are you going? Hall Master Xing explained with his sight still fixated on the progeny of combat on the screen. When he finally turned about to look at Hall Master Zhao, he realized that the latter had already stood up and was walking toward Zhong Xian with a hostile glint in his eyes. I don't care whether you are the head of the Shenzhen faction or whoever you are, but our Combat Master Hall is currently holding a solemn ceremony now. Please leave this instant, or else don't blame me for getting nasty with you. The decree of the progeny of combat was a confidential secret among the Combat Master Hall. Since the young man was not from the Combat Master Hall, he should have known better than to land in the middle of the concourse. Or, could it be that he was trying to eavesdrop on the confidential secrets of the Combat Master Hall? You want to get nasty with me? Zhong Xian frowned in displeasure. He had rushed over to see how the friendly spa had gone, only to see the image of Zheng Yang before the great Combat Master atrium while he was making his way over. Thus, he could not help but land in the concourse to take a closer look. Looking at how his student had matured, and he could not help but feel a little nostalgic inside. But at that moment, this old man suddenly came over to threaten him. That's right, don't think. Hall Master Zhao Yi bellowed furiously, but before he could finish his words, a finger suddenly appeared before his eyes. Su. Hall Master Zhao Yi's eyes widened in astonishment, but it was already too late for him to respond. It appeared to be a normal flick, but due to the immense force harnessed within the flick, his body swiftly retreated into the distance before colliding with the wall of the atrium, producing a resounding explosion. Zhong Xian was in no mood to deal with anyone. This was a precious moment for him and his student, and he did not want to be interrupted by anyone. Since the old man was the one who had provoked him in the first place, he had no qualms about flicking the old man away. After sending the old man flying, Zhong Xian placed his hands behind his back once more as he continued looking at the screen before him. Watching how Zheng Yang had become the progeny of combat had left him many emotions within. He had accompanied Zheng Yang on every part of his journey since Qianqian Kingdom, watching how an ordinary spear fanatic who had just had his heart broken slowly worked diligently day in and day out, gradually refining his spear art to a level far surpassing his peers, eventually becoming the progeny of combat. So many things had changed in less than a year. Time sure was a powerful force. A teacher can only do so much for their student. The true reason for your success lies in your own diligence and perseverance. Zhong Xian nodded in approval. While the simplified Heaven's Path spear art was an unparalleled battle technique in the world, it would be for naught if the practitioner himself did not work diligently on it. Just take Sun Qiong for example. Forget it, let's not talk about something that depressing on this happy occasion. Zheng Yang could not be considered the most talented among his direct disciples, but without a doubt, he was the most valiant and hot-blooded of them all. It was his deep love and perseverance for the spear that had led him to where he was today. Even the most capable of teachers could only play an auxiliary role in the lives of their students. Zheng Yang had managed to pave his own way forward, and Zhong Xian was happy for him. How dare you! Climbing out of the rubble, Hall Master Zhao Yi gritted his teeth in fury. He had thought that the brazen young man would leave sheepishly after hearing his criticism, but who knew that the latter would actually be so arrogant as to beat him up? To make a move against a hall master in a combat master hall. Unpardonable. Seething with rage, Hall Master Zhao Yi was just about to rush up to the young man once more to teach him a lesson when he suddenly saw Hall Master Xing rushing toward him. Hall Master Xing, that leader of the Qianqian faction, actually dared to brazenly assault me before the progeny of combat. He might be your guest, but such actions cannot be tolerated in the Combat Master Hall. Otherwise, what will become of the discipline of the combat masters? Hall Master Zhao Yi spat angrily through gritted teeth. The reason his candidates had failed to acquire a single slot to the Sword Lagoon of the Qianchong Empire was due to that fellow, and he had even been humiliated by a young lady of the Qianqian faction just a moment ago. While he had chosen to accept those matters, it was still inevitable that they would breed some frustration and resentment within him toward the leader of the Qianqian faction. This incident only served to spark those negative emotions within him. Completely clouded by rage, the only thing that was on his mind at that moment was to teach that young man a lesson. Listen to me, he isn't just an ordinary guest. Hall Master Xing hurriedly advised. I know that your Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall is indebted to him, but he dared to disrespect the progeny of combat and undermine the Combat Master Hall. If I don't teach him a lesson, how am I to face my combat masters? Hall Master Zhao Yi harumphed coldly as he marched forward furiously. Fine, do whatever you like. Seeing how Hall Master Zhao Yi refused to hear his words, Hall Master Xing frowned in displeasure. He flung his sleeves impatiently and said, "Right, I forgot to tell you. The name of the leader of the Shenxian faction is Zhong Xian." Zhong Xian? That name caused Hall Master Zhao Yi to halt in his footsteps. An ominous feeling in his heart left him shuddering in fear as he asked meekly, "The teacher of the progeny of combat? Who else?" Hall Master Xing replied curtly before returning to his position to kneel down. "If you desire death that much, go ahead. I won't stop you. He really is the teacher of the progeny of combat." Hall Master Zhao Yi suddenly found the world spinning around him as he struggled to process what he had just heard. It was no wonder the candidates of the Qingyuan Empire Combat Master Hall would grow so much stronger after 3 days of guidance. If the teacher of the progeny of combat was behind the matter, that would explain a lot. Who? Hall Master Zhao Yi stood petrified on the spot, not knowing what he should do. At this moment, the silhouette of the progeny of combat gradually faded after issuing his decree. The surrounding combat masters stood up and turned toward Zhong Xian before bowing respectfully. All of them know. Hall Master Zhao Yi's eyes swam around the place from frenzy. He was really in deep trouble this time around. The progeny of combat had just instructed everyone to treat his teacher with the utmost respect, and yet, right after hearing the decree, he had insolently told the young man to leave the Combat Master Hall. His face gradually turned redder and redder as he racked his brain to figure out a way to get the young man to pardon him for his rudeness. At that moment, Hall Masters Wei Chenshu and Liu Qinshan suddenly walked up to Zhong Xian and clasped their fists respectfully. Paying respects to Zhong Shi. Our Combat Master Hall is interested in having an exchange with the Shenxian faction. May I know if Zhong Shi will be so magnanimous as to grant us the opportunity to learn from the Shenxian faction? I have long heard of the fame of the Shenxian faction, and it would truly be an honor to have an exchange with you. Hearing those words, Hall Master Zhao Yi's lips twitched in frenzy. Those two fellows were too shameless. It was just a moment ago that they had been filled with disdain with the so-called Shenxian faction. Yet, as soon as they learned that the leader of the Shenxian faction was the teacher of the progeny of combat, their attitudes had immediately taken a 180 degrees turn. Where was their dignity? You can discuss the issue with Hall Master Xing. Seeing that a huge crowd was swiftly gathering around him, Zhong Xian shook his head before taking his leave. Still overwhelmed by his emotions from seeing how Zheng Yang had become the progeny of combat, Zhong Xian was in no mood to deal with such miscellaneous affairs. In any case, there were others to handle the matter in his stead, so there was no need for him to deal with them personally. Thus, he returned to his residence. Not too long later, Hall Master Xing knocked on his door. "Principal Zhong, thanks to your training, our candidates managed to obtain all 20 slots to Chenchong Empire's Sword Lagoon. As promised, I'll share half of the awarded concentrated high-tier spirit stones with you. However, it will probably take some time before the reward arrives." "Roughly, how long will it take?" Hall Master Xing pondered for a moment before replying. "The headquarters have a unique delivery method, but even so, it will still take at least 10 days. 10 days? Zhong Xian shook his head and sighed helplessly. He had thought that he would be able to acquire the concentrated high-tier spirit stones swiftly and quickly advance his cultivation to embryonic soul realm pinnacle, but from the looks of it, it seemed like he would still have to wait a while longer. Why did cultivation have to be so difficult? Looking back, he really missed the days when he could advance an entire realm within a single night. "Principal Zhong, do you still require a lot of concentrated high-tier spirit stones?" Hall Master Xing asked after noticing Zhong Xian's frustrated expression. "Yes. Do you know of a way to acquire them?" "I don't have any way to acquire more concentrated high-tier spirit stones, but if you are intending to use them for your cultivation, perhaps you could try the grade 7 spirit reinforcing pill instead," Hall Master Xing suggested. The spirit reinforcing pill harnesses concentrated medicinal energy that can advance even the cultivation of a leaving aperture realm cultivator significantly. Spirit reinforcing pill? Zhong Xian pondered for a moment. There was some information regarding spirit reinforcing pills within the books in the Master Teacher Pavilion. It was a grade 7 pill that had an effect similar to concentrated high-tier spirit stones. However, he had never seen the pill in person before, and he did not have the pill formula for it either. I happen to have a spirit-reinforcing pill with me at the moment. Principal Zhong, why don't you give it a try? If it is effective, you can acquire more from Guild Leader Wu. He should have quite a few in his possession. Hall Master Xing flicked his wrist and passed a jade bottle to Zhong Xian. Thank you. Zhong Xian took the jade bottle and uncapped it. Floating within the bottle was a crimson pill, and he could vaguely feel the concentrated spirit energy that was sealed within it. Taking the pill out of the bottle, he popped it into his mouth. The pill swiftly dissolved into a huge accumulation of warm, concentrated spiritual energy, which swiftly flowed through his meridians before eventually gathering in his dantian. It's effective. Zhong Xian's eyes lit up. Too accustomed to cultivating with spirit stones, he had not really thought of seeking other substitutes for spiritual energy. However, the fact was that there were plenty of items that could replace the use of spirit stones. For example, the earth vein spirit essence that he had acquired from the Cloud Mist Ridgeback then was a superior substitute for middle-tier spirit stones. Naturally, there were also some pills that could replace spirit stones as well. Even though the spiritual energy within the spirit-reinforcing pill was less concentrated than that of concentrated high-tier spirit stones, it was still useful to him at the moment. If he could just acquire enough of them, he would be able to push for a breakthrough to embryonic spirit realm pinnacle. Seeing how the young man swallowed the pill directly without bothering to sit down and cultivate, Hall Master Xing widened his eyes in astonishment. Principal Zhong, don't you have to cultivate to assimilate the energy within the pill into your body? Even he would have to take some time to assimilate the energy within a spirit-reinforcing pill, and yet, the Saint Realm 3 Dan young man before him had actually swallowed it so recklessly. Was he not scared of absorbing in too much spiritual energy in one go and exploding? I have already assimilated the energy within the pill, Zhong Xian replied with a hint of confusion in his voice. It was only one small pill. He had assimilated the energy within it a moment after consuming the pill. Why would he have to specially cultivate for it? You have already assimilated it. Hall Master Xing's lips twitched in frenzy. At this moment, he finally understood how the young man before him had been able to advance his cultivation so swiftly. Putting everything aside, just the rate of his assimilation was already incomparable to any ordinary cultivator. Are there more of such pills in the Apothecary Guild? Zhong Xian asked. If he wanted to achieve a breakthrough using the spirit-reinforcing pill, he would require a massive amount of them, 100 at the very minimum. Just that, would the Apothecary Guild have that many pills for him? I'm not too sure either. You will have to ask Guild Leader Wu for that, Hall Master Xing replied. Guild Leader Wu Huayu was the individual who had invigilated Zhong Xian's pill debate examination back when he was still at the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy. Zhong Xian's exceptional results then had led him to deliver the Grand Intermittence Grass to the Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy personally. Unfortunately, Zhong Xian happened to be away back then. Okay. I'll head to the Apothecary Guild now then, Zhong Xian replied. Luo Ruoxin would be marrying the genius of the Zhong clan on the 3rd month of the following year. He could not afford to waste any time. Bidding Hall Master Xing farewell, Zhong Xian walked out of his accommodation, only to see Luo Chichi walking toward him. Teacher. Upon seeing Luo Chichi, Zhong Xian felt a slight headache. As an attached man, he felt a little awkward about being confessed to by his student. Nevertheless, knowing that he could not possibly continue hiding from the other party, he sighed inwardly as he walked up to Luo Chichi. Teacher, can you accompany me for a day? Noticing that Zhong Xian's expression had turned a little awful, Luo Chichi's face sank slightly, but she continued staring at him with expectant eyes. Just one day. Chapter 1201. Your teacher shall redress your grievances for you. What's wrong? Noticing that the young lady's eyes were slightly reddened, as if she had just cried a moment ago, Zhong Xian frowned. While Luo Chichi's confession had made the relationship between the two of them slightly awkward, he would not hesitate to strike down anyone who dared bully his student. It's nothing much. Luo Chichi's eyes seemed to dim for a moment before she raised her head once more and replied with a smile. I just want to spend some time with you, teacher. Ah. All right then. Seeing that Luo Chichi had something weighing on her mind, Zhongxian hesitated for a moment before eventually nodding. It was inevitable for those two outstanding to be fancied by others. As long as he maintained an appropriate distance between the two of them, there was no issue with them spending some time together. As long as he conducted himself correctly and made his intentions clear, it would only be a matter of time before the other party dispelled her thoughts. On the other hand, if he continued avoiding her, it would only cause her mind to wander, and that could prove to be dangerous. Hearing Zhongxian's consent, Luo Chichi's face lit up in delight. Then, shall we find a quiet place? It's a little noisy over here. Be it the Combat Master Hall or the Shenshen faction, they were filled with familiar faces. It was indeed a little inconvenient. Thus, Zhongxian nodded in agreement. The duo took flight, and before long, they landed at the top of a mountain right outside Qingyuan City. Sitting on a boulder near the cliff, Luo Chichi gazed intently at the bustling Qingyuan City, seemingly pondering over something. A mountainous breeze tousled her hair, pulling some strands over her impeccable face. Yet, this slight imperfection seemed to be perfect in its own way as well. Admittedly, the young lady was indeed very beautiful, and her beauty was not just limited to her exterior. She had a calming disposition that placed those around her at ease as well, making it very comfortable to be around her. Facing young lady's queer silence, Zhongxian asked with a frown, "Is there something on your mind?" "As long as it's within my means, I'll try my best to help you." There was no doubt that the young lady had some worries on her mind, but there was nothing he could do about it if the latter refused to speak. "It's nothing much. It's just that I suddenly remembered some things from my childhood." Luo Chichi smiled as she quietly gazed down at Qingyuan City. "When I was younger, I liked to spend my time idly sitting on the rooftop and watching the sunrise and sunset, as well as the birds that fluttered their wings freely in the sky. Somehow, that brought me great joy as a child. There was one time when I found myself deeply desiring an artifact. I really wanted it a lot, so I pestered my father to get it for me. In the face of my relentless pleas, my father eventually caved in. However, he said that he would only give it to me after I mastered a cultivation technique, so I frantically cultivated, regardless of day or night. A year later, I finally succeeded. My father did not renege on our promise either, and he gave the artifact to me. I can still remember how happy I was the day I received the artifact. It was something that I had acquired through my hard work. I brought it around with me every day, hugging it to sleep even. But on one occasion, while I was fighting with another, it broke. I was truly heartbroken, and I wept for 3 whole days. My father found an identical one to comfort me, and it was really the same no matter how one looked at it. But for some reason, I no longer wanted it. With her knees hugged to her chest and her chin resting atop them, Luo Chichi tilted her head over and asked, "Teacher, do you know why?" Zhongxian shook his head. "It is because it is no longer the same one that I liked. Even if it appears identical, it isn't," Luo Chichi replied. Not knowing how to respond to it, Zhongxian was quiet for a long moment before replying with a nod. This should have been a common experience for many. When an object that one liked a lot was destroyed, even if an identical one was bought to replace it, the anticipation for it would no longer be there. Sentiment was not something that could be transferred just because 2 objects appeared or were identical. Eventually, I slowly came to understand that just because I liked something doesn't mean that I'll be able to possess it forever. Just like that shattered artifact, no matter what I do, I'll never be able to get it back to how it was anymore. At this point, Luo Chichi turned to look at Zhongxian once more. It seemed like she had many words at the back of her throat, but she was unable to voice them. Noticing that there was something amiss with the young lady's state, Zhongxian said, "What's wrong? Did someone bully you? If the other party is at fault, I'll exact vengeance for you." Fart. Luo Chichi suddenly burst into laughter. She looked at Zhongxian playfully as she asked, "Will you really exact vengeance for me?" "Of course," Zhongxian replied with a light smile. "You are the one who bullied me. Do it, exact vengeance for me," Luo Chichi said earnestly. Zhongxian was rendered speechless. A moment of carelessness, and he had fallen into the young lady's trap once more. Back then, She had claimed that she had some doubts in mind and needed answers, but in the midst of clarifying her doubts, he had ended up being confessed to. It seemed like it was the same this time around as well. A pitiful front, but if he were to earnestly respond to it, he would fall into a pit as well. Just as Zhongxian was at a loss, the young lady suddenly stared at him intently and said, "Teacher, you haven't given me a proper response yet. You should also know that my feelings for you are more than just those between a teacher and a student. Is this how you should talk to your teacher?" Zhongxian frowned. "If that's all you want to say, I'll be leaving now." After saying those words, Zhongxian stood up. I'm joking. Don't get mad." Luo Chichi quickly appeased Zhongxian while secretly sticking her tongue out. "It's not funny. Please do not make that kind of joke again." Zhongxian waved his hand. "All right. Teacher." Luo Chichi paused for a moment before asking, "Will you teach me pill forging one more time?" "Sure." Zhongxian nodded. "What kind of pill do you want to forge?" There were many different pill formulae in the world, and each of them had a unique forging method. "The pill that I want to forge is the grade 7 spirit reinforcing pill," Luo Chichi replied. "Spirit reinforcing pill?" Zhongxian was taken aback. It was just a moment ago that he had told Hall Master Xing that he needed some spirit reinforcing pills, and he had been intending to find them at the Apothecary Guild. Who could have known that Luo Chichi would suddenly ask to learn to forge the pill at this moment? "That's right," Luo Chichi replied with an innocent blink of her eyes. Zhongxian hesitated for a moment before asking, "Do you have the required pill formula and medicinal herbs?" This would be a good opportunity for him to refine the forging method for the spirit reinforcing pill. With this, he would be spared from a lot of trouble when he headed to the Apothecary Guild. "I have already prepared them," Luo Chichi answered with a smile before flicking her wrist to take out a jade token. Zhongxian took the jade token and scanned it with his consciousness. The content imprinted within the jade token was swiftly transferred into his mind. It was indeed the pill formula for the spirit reinforcing pill. With Zhongxian's knowledge as a 7-star pinnacle apothecary, it did not take him too long to deduce the most ideal method to forge the pill. "Here are the medicinal herbs." Luo Chichi flicked her wrist once more, and a huge pile of medicinal herbs appeared before her eyes. Taking a swift look at the medicinal herbs, Zhongxian was stunned. "Where did you find these medicinal herbs?" The medicinal herbs that the young lady had taken out each had a maturity of at least several thousand years. One must know that such medicinal herbs were worth an astronomical sum. An ordinary spirit reinforcing pill only required medicinal herbs that were 50 years mature. If one were to use these several thousand-year-old medicinal herbs to forge the spirit reinforcing pill, the produced pills would at least be several dozen times more potent. As you know, I like to study and explore. I happened to discover an ancient domain a while back, and these medicinal herbs came from there. Luo Chichi explained. "You really are quite lucky," Zhongxian remarked. Given how meticulous Luo Chichi was, even being able to trace the underground chamber where Wu Yangzi had been imprisoned through a forged weapon, it was not surprising that she had discovered other ancient domains as well. "Teacher, are these medicinal herbs sufficient to forge the origin reinforcing pill?" Luo Chichi asked. "Definitely. Not only sufficient, the spirit reinforcing pill will also be of exceptional quality." Zhongxian nodded. "However, these medicinal herbs are valuable, so you have to be careful not to make an error during the forging. A cauldron explosion with these herbs would be a huge pity. With such valuable medicinal herbs, as long as the forging process was perfect as well, there was a good chance that they would be able to up the grade of the spirit reinforcing pill." Luo Chichi nodded. "Since the medicinal herbs used are of a significantly higher maturity, I'll have to make some changes to the forging method. Give me a moment," Zhongxian said. Naturally, the forging method had to be changed when the potency of the medicinal herbs used was different. Zhongxian swiftly went through his forging method once more to tailor it to the current conditions before flicking his wrist to summon the Golden Origin Cauldron. While the Golden Origin Cauldron was a weapon cauldron, it could also be used as a pill cauldron as long as several conversion formations were cast over it. "Let's use the Golden Origin Cauldron for the forging," It should lower the chances of a cauldron explosion. All right, Luo Chichi replied. Once everything was ready, Zhongxian whipped out a brush and penned down the revised pill formula before passing it over to the young lady. It did not take long for the young lady to memorize the pill formula, and soon, the pill forging began. With Zhongxian guiding by the side, the pill forging proceeded smoothly. Soon, the lid of the cauldron was opened, and a burst of spiritual energy burst up to the heavens. Su. 5 pills flew out of the cauldron, intending to escape. Quasi-grade 8 pills. Zhongxian's eyes lit up. He waved his hand, and the golden origin cauldron swiftly leaped up to capture the fleeing pills. After which, Zhongxian carefully placed them into jade bottle that he had prepared beforehand. The spirit-reinforcing pill was intended to be a grade 7 pill, but due to the superior maturity of the medicinal herbs used in the forging, they had actually managed to forge 5 quasi-grade 8 pill. While they were not true grade 8 pills yet, their potency could not be compared to a spirit-reinforcing pill. Since you were able to forge such spirit-reinforcing pills, I believe that you should have mastered the forging technique for it as well. Zhongxian passed the jade bottle to the young lady with a smile. On top of being quasi-grade 8, those pills were inscribed pills as well. Beautiful patterns flowed over the pills, granting them an exceptional beauty. The quality of a pill could be divided into 4 tiers: formation, satiation, perfection, and inscribed pill. The fact that Luo Chichi was able to produce an inscribed pill showed that she already commanded a perfect understanding for the forging process of the specific pill. As long as she digested what she had learned from this experience, her comprehension of pill forging would shoot up significantly. It's due to your guidance that I was able to successfully forge the spirit-reinforcing pills. Thus, I would like to gift these pills to you. Luo Chichi pushed the jade bottle back to Zhongxian. I can't accept these spirit-reinforcing pills from you. Zhongxian shook his head. The medicinal herbs had come from the young lady, and the pill had been forged by her as well. Even though he had guided her from the side, this was not a good enough reason for him to accept these incredibly valuable pills from her. Then, how about this? I'll keep one for myself and gift the remaining 4 to you. If you still feel that it's too much to accept, you can compensate me with spirit stones. Seeing through Zhongxian's thoughts, Luo Chichi took a pill out of the jade bottle before pushing the rest back to him. After a moment of hesitation, Zhongxian eventually nodded. This. All right then. It just so happened that he needed some spirit-reinforcing pill, and the effectiveness of these quasi-grade 8 pills was equivalent to several dozen ordinary ones. With 4 of these, he would have no trouble achieving a breakthrough to embryonic soul realm pinnacle. Taking out a storage ring, Zhongxian placed the 10,000 high-tier spirit stones that he had obtained from the appraiser hall into it before passing it over. Luo Chichi carefully took the storage ring from Zhongxian before raising her head to look at Zhongxian once more. Teacher, you said earlier that you would exact vengeance for me if anyone bullies me. Did you mean it? Not expecting Luo Chichi to suddenly ask such a question, Zhongxian was taken aback. A moment later, he nodded. Yes. If anyone dares bully you, your teacher shall redress your grievances for you. Chapter 1202 Saint Threedan Pinnacle. No matter what, Luo Chichi was still his student. If someone bullied her, he could not possibly sit idly. This was just like how he would stand up for Lu Chong and the others. Thank you. Seeing the unwavering look in the man's eyes, Luo Chichi could not help but recall the sight of the latter standing up against the otherworldly demon puppets back in the underground chamber, and a faint smile crept onto her lips. It had been half a year since she had come to know this man, and she knew what kind of person he was. For his student, he would stand against an entire kingdom unhesitatingly. For his butler, he was a man who would oppose the first king and a vice-pavilion master of a conferred empire. Domineering, but very protective of those whom he cared for. Just by this alone, she had no doubt that he would rush to her rescue if something happened to her. And this was why she loved him. Earnest, gutsy, responsible, and decisive. To those whom he cared for, he would treat them earnestly, not showing the slightest hint of hypocrisy. Teacher, I'm happy to hear such words from you. All right, I'll be heading back first. Luo Chichi patted the dust off her hand as she flashed Zhongxian a smile. I won't impose on you any longer. Zhongxian waved his hand. Go on. Even though he had not voiced it explicitly, his actions should have clearly shown his rejection for her feelings. After the affairs today, she should understand that he viewed her as another one of his precious students, and her affection toward him would never bear fruit. Hopefully, she would cast aside those thoughts and find one who was truly suited for her. Luo Chichi turned around before muttering softly, farewell, teacher. After which, she leaped into the air, and before long, she vanished from sight. At Luo Chichi's departure, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. He had only spent 2 hours with the other party, but he felt as if he had fought a war. It seemed like he would really have to hold himself back in the future and maintain a lower profile, or else it would be troublesome if too many ladies were to fall in love with him. Sometimes, being too outstanding was a sorrow. Shaking his head, Zhongxian was just about to find a place to cultivate with his newly acquired spirit-reinforcing pills when he suddenly saw a figure heading over. It was none other than Yu Feiya. Zhongsha, aren't you being a little biased? You should have told me that you were teaching Chichi pill forging. I want to learn it, too. Yu Feiya harumphed as soon as she landed on the cliff, apparently displeased by the private time he had spent with Luo Chichi. The both of them had confessed, and yet, Zhongxian had still chosen to spend some private with Luo Chichi. She could not help but feel a little jealous at that. I was only teaching her pill forging. Nothing of what you are thinking happened. Zhongxian rubbed his glabella in frustration. Knowing that it would be better to be straightforward with someone of Yu Feiya personality, he decided to get straight to the point. To be honest with you, I already have someone that I like. Really? Who is it? Is it Chichi? Yu Feiya asked in alarm. It's not her but, the little princess of the Luo clan, Zhongxian replied. Luo clan? As in the sage clan? Yu Feiya did not believe what she was hearing. The Luo clan is a lofty existence in the master-teacher continent, so how could you be acquainted with their little princess? The sage clans were existences that stood at the very peak of the master-teacher continent, the very embodiment of absolute power. In comparison to the Luo clan, her Hongyuan royal family was truly nothing at all. Considering that Zhongxian originated from the humble Tianxian kingdom, how could he possibly be acquainted with someone as noble as the little princess from the Luo clan, let alone fall in love with her? You can choose not to believe my words if you want to. As for how I came to know her, I can only say that it was the workings of destiny. Furthermore, I can tell you that the feelings that we have for one another are mutual. At this point, Zhongxian could not help but think of Luo Ruoxin, and his lips unknowingly curled up into a smile. It was a misunderstanding that had brought them together the first time they met. He had thought that she was being pursued by spirit beasts back then, and he had forcefully pulled her down into a river, only to faint in the end. Thinking about it, the misunderstanding seemed almost like the miraculous working of fate. If that had not happened, would they still be together today? In any case, since he already had someone he loved, he did not want to get too deeply involved with other ladies anymore. Yu Feiya was a headstrong and resolute person, so he felt that he should nip her feelings in the bud. I don't believe you. You are lying. Yu Feiya's face paled. All along, she had thought that Zhongxian had no girlfriend and that she, Luo Chichi, and Hu Yaro all stood a chance as long as they worked diligently. However, it seemed like they were already too late. You are a wonderful lady, but what I am saying is the truth. Zhongxian shook his head. But I. Too agitated, Yu Feiya's breathing hastened, rendering her unable to continue. Gritting her teeth, she turned around. After a moment of silence, she spat, one word after a word, Zhongsha, I have imposed on you today. I'll be leaving now. Then, not even waiting for Zhongxian's response, she leaped into the sky and took flight, disappearing into the horizon in a few moments. Even though she did not say anything, her voice was tinged with sorrow and shock. She could not believe that Zhongxian was taken, and she could not accept it either. Geez. Seeing that he had unintentionally hurt 2 ladies in just a few moments, Zhongxian shook his head and sighed. If possible, he did not want to have done that either. But he simply did not harbor any romantic feelings toward them. If he had allowed their feelings for him to develop, it would only have caused them greater pain in the future. Only for Luo Ruoxin did his heart beat. Having experienced 2 lifetimes in 2 different worlds, he had already seen many things, allowing him to remain unfazed and composed before most matters. Yet, before Luo Ruoxin, he acted like a young man. Out of jealousy, he had ended up beating Feng Zun up and intentionally traumatizing Zhong Jiuxiao. Despite his rational personality, he found himself with an irrational hate for the Zhong clan as well. Luo Chichi and Yu Fei were beautiful and outstanding ladies, but neither of them were able to generate such feelings within him. He knew very well that all he felt for them was the care and concern that a teacher would have for his students. Since that was the case, rather than get needlessly entangled with them, it would be better to dash whatever hope they had before they descended deeper into the abyss. After all, the greater the expectation, the greater the disappointment. He was certain that this was the best course of action. Forget it, I shouldn't think too much into it now. I should raise my cultivation to embryonic soul realm pinnacle first. Shaking his head, Zhongxian tossed aside the other thoughts he had in his mind and sat cross-legged on the ground. The area was exceptionally quiet, and there was not a person in sight. It was the ideal environment for him to cultivate in. He quickly conditioned the internal state of his body and his breath, and when his physical condition finally peaked roughly 2 hours later, he took out a spirit-reinforcing pill and swallowed it. The spirit-reinforcing pills that Luo Chichi had forged were made using extremely mature medicinal herbs. Those medicinal herbs harnessed rich medicinal energy, and the pills were perfectly forged on top of that, reaching the tier of inscribed pill. As such, every single one of the 4 pills harnessed several dozen times more spiritual energy than the one he had obtained from Hall Master Xing. As the pill dissolved in his mouth, he immediately felt a blazing surge of energy coursing through his meridians before eventually gathering around his origin soul. Upon reaching Saint 3 Dan intermediate stage, his origin soul had adopted a form reminiscent of an 8-year-old child. Its every move seemed to be tinged with incredible might that could shatter the world. Calming his mind, Zhongxian focused his consciousness on the internal state of his body as he began to drive his zhenqi according to the Saint 3 Dan Heaven's Path divine art. Whenever he felt that he was running low on spiritual energy, he would unhesitatingly swallow a spirit-reinforcing pill. As he absorbed more and more spiritual energy from the spirit-reinforcing pills, his cultivation and strength swiftly rose. Embryonic soul realm intermediate stage. Embryonic soul realm advanced stage. Embryonic soul realm pinnacle. An hour later, his origin soul had already adopted the form of a 16 to 17-year-old young man, sharing an identical appearance with him, just slightly younger. Its size remained the same as back when it was just an infant, 10 meters tall. It did not become any taller during its development. Finally, Zhongxian exclaimed after a deep exhalation. He had really gone through a lot of trouble just to raise his cultivation to this level. Fortunately, diligence did not fail him. After overcoming all the difficulties in his path, he had finally managed to reach embryonic soul realm pinnacle. However, the 4 spirit-reinforcing pills that Luo Chichi had given him also ended up being depleted as well, and he had become poor once more. Assessing his internal condition again, he felt that the flow of zhenqi in his body was far smoother than ever, and his strength had already risen by leaps and bounds as compared to before. He stretched out his hands and lightly closed his fist together. Pang! A sonic boom sounded, and the next moment, the boulder beneath him suddenly burst into dust. It was fortunate that he had flown up in advance, or else he would have been cloaked in dust. This is the might wielded by an embryonic soul realm pinnacle expert. Zhongxian clenched his fists tightly together in excitement. Incredible! Even though it was hard for him to determine his current strength until he exchanged blows with a true expert, he was confident that if he were to meet the Qingtian Emperor once more, he would be able to crush the latter into meat paste with a single punch. Voila! Rising to his feet, he reined in his aura, and the pressure he exerted finally vanished. In the eyes of other cultivators, he would only appear as an ordinary Saint 3 Dan pinnacle. Even though he had raised his cultivation significantly, he still had every intention of maintaining a low profile. If he could avoid standing in the spotlight, He would try his best to do so to avoid unnecessary trouble. At my current cultivation realm, ordinary spirit reinforcing pills won't be of much use to me anymore. There's no longer any point in me heading to the apothecary guild. Zhongxian's original intention had been to pay a visit to the apothecary guild to purchase some spirit reinforcing pill to advance his cultivation. However, along with the rise in his cultivation, it would seem that the concentration of the spiritual energy within ordinary spirit reinforcing pill was no longer sufficient for his cultivation. As such, it would be futile no matter how many of them he acquired. He would only be wasting his money. Forget it, I should just return to the Combat Master Hall. Those 3 hall masters should still be around, so I can assess my new strength on them, Zhongxian thought with a chuckle as he began making his way back to the Combat Master Hall. However, just as he was about to make his way back, he suddenly froze for a moment. Flicking his wrist, he took out a jade token. Wuxia had sent him a message. After taking a look at it, his face immediately turned grim. Pavilion Master Go is dead. Chapter 1203 Crisis at the Master Teacher Pavilion. In the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion, straw mats lay side by side on the ground, and 8 corpses were neatly placed on top. The corpses were each dressed in a Master Teacher robe, and the 7 gleaming stars on their chests indicated their identities. Zhongxian was extremely familiar with the elder in the center. It was due to the injustice that the elder had brought upon him that he had gone to the extent of crashing the Master Teacher Pavilion, even directly exchanging blows with him in the midst of doing so. He had thought that the elder would be severely judged by the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters, but who would have thought that he would die before then? Zhongxian turned to Wuxia and asked grimly, "What happened?" "It happened earlier in the day. Based on the list of names you gave me, I quickly moved to apprehend those related master teachers and apprehend them. However, just as I was interrogating the 8th suspect, my subordinate suddenly reported to me that 8 master teachers of the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion had passed away." Wuxia replied lividly. He had interrogated the apprehended suspects discreetly so as to not alarm the enemy, but it seemed like the enemy had somehow learned of the matter and decided to kill 8 7-star master teachers to warn them against probing any further into the matter. And the victims included even the old Pavilion Master Go. Hearing those words, Zhongxian's face darkened. It was a blatant threat targeted toward them. Furthermore, Wuxia continued, they all died in the same manner as Chen Zhe and the others. When we found them, their souls had already dissipated, leaving behind an empty body. Zhongxian fell silent. He had also noticed the same as soon as he stepped into the room. Despite their bodies being perfectly intact, the 8 master teachers did not have a hint of life within them. Only the soul-nabbing secret art could result in such a deeply unnerving death. It's vicious. Zhongxian clenched his fists tightly together. Only Vicious had the strength to nab even Pavilion Master Go's soul. Just that, from what he knew, Vicious should have been in the marshlands of the Northern Meadows. Furthermore, from what he had learned in the Qingtian Emperor's memories, it appeared that Vicious had been sealed by something, preventing him from leaving the region. Considering the long distance between Qingyuan City and the marshlands of the Northern Meadows, how could he possibly carry out such a feat? Zhongxian turned around and asked, where were they found? They were found in their accommodation. Their family members thought that they were resting, so they did not disturb them initially. However, when they attempted to call for them but received no response, they approached them, only to realize that they had stopped breathing. Wuxia replied before turning to look at Zhongxian. Does this matter have something to do with the Qingtian Emperor? But, isn't the Qingtian Emperor already dead? As a soul oracle, the Qingtian Emperor was skilled in soul arts, and he had killed Chen Zhe and the others using one of his secret arts. Zhongxian had already informed him of this matter, thus unraveling the cause of the mysterious deaths that had occurred in the Master Teacher Pavilion a while back. But since it was affirmed that the Qingtian Emperor was already dead, who else could possibly wield the ability to pull off the same feat? The deaths of these 8 7-star Master Teachers were simply so abrupt and mysterious that it had shocked everyone in the Master Teacher Pavilion, sending them into a fluster. It was the norm for humans to fear those that they were unable to comprehend, and even Master Teachers were no exception to the rule. Pavilion Master Go had been viewed as the strongest individual in Qingyuan City, but if even he could be killed silently without putting up a fight, it did not seem like anyone would stand a chance against the murderer. The realization of this notion left the necks of the master teachers feeling cold. The Qingtian Emperor is dead, but the person behind him is still alive and kicking, Zhongxian replied with a vexed look. The person behind him? Wu Shi was perplexed by those words. As the matter concerning vicious existence was simply too huge, Zhongxian had decided not to tell anyone about it. As such, not even Wu Shi was aware of the matter. Yes. Even if the Qingtian Emperor was the emperor of the otherworldly demonic tribe, it is worth contemplating how he managed to learn the heritage of the Soul oracles when they had already disappeared many years ago. As such, I believe that there's a mastermind behind this matter who imparted the heritage of the Soul oracles to the Qingtian Emperor. If my deduction is correct, he's probably the one who had caused this as well, Zhongxian replied. A mastermind who imparted the heritage of the Soul oracles to the Qingtian Emperor? Wu Shi narrowed his eyes in alarm as he said, "How powerful do you think the mastermind is? If he's beyond the means of a conferred empire, I'll immediately report this matter to the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters and have them dispatch some men to assist us." The Master Teacher Pavilion had its own system. Typically speaking, while subordinate Master Teacher Pavilions would report major affairs to the Master Teacher Pavilion above them, they were still expected to resolve matters in the region by themselves. Firstly, the headquarters also had their own region to care for, and they did not have the spare energy and time to be cleaning up after the subordinate Master Teacher Pavilions. Secondly, it would also serve as a platform to temper the Master Teachers in the branch. If the headquarters had to attend to every single problem that the subordinate Master Teacher Pavilions were facing, it probably would not have been long before the advanced Master Teachers worked themselves to death. However, if the problem exceeded the scope of the subordinate Master Teacher Pavilion, that was a different matter. If such a problem was left uncared for, it could possibly lead to a great massacre. In such cases, the subordinate Master Teacher Pavilion would be justified in calling for the aid of a higher-ranked Master Teacher from the headquarters. How long will it take for the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters to dispatch an envoy? Zhongxian asked with a frown. Wu Shi swiftly did a rough calculation before replying. If I recall correctly, the Master Teacher Pavilion closest to us that has at least one half 8-star Master Teacher is the Qianchong Conferred Empire Master Teacher Pavilion. If the headquarters dispatched a half 8-star Master Teacher from them, judging from the distance, it would take at least 10 days. However, if we require an 8-star Master Teacher, we would have to call for an envoy directly from the Empire Alliance Master Teacher Pavilion, and if that's the case, it will take 20 days at the minimum. 10 days, 20 days? We don't have that much time to spare. Zhongxian pinched his glabella grimly. By the time the envoy arrives, our Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion could have very well been massacred. What do we do then? Wu Shi asked anxiously. Indeed, they could not afford to wait 10 to 20 days. The enemy possessed an ability to kill their men silently, and in a single night, he had already managed to take out 8 7-star Master Teachers. If the enemy continued their massacre at the current rate, it would not be long before all of the 7-star Master Teachers of the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion were killed. I'm not too sure how powerful the mastermind behind the Qingtian Emperor is, but I believe that his strength shouldn't exceed the Leaving Aperture realm. Otherwise, the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters would have definitely kept a lookout for their movements, Zhongxian analyzed. While the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters left the regional Master Teacher Pavilion to their own devices, they would still conduct a thorough scan throughout the world using a special technique from time to time. If they found any existences that exceeded the tier of the regional Master Teacher Pavilion, they would eliminate it immediately if they viewed it to be a threat, or else, they would maintain a close watch over its movements. The highest fighting power in conferred empires was the Leaving Aperture realm. Considering how Vicious Eye was able to remain in the marshlands of the Northern Meadows without alerting the Master Teacher Pavilion headquarters, it was likely that he had not exceeded that level. But even if he has not exceeded Leaving Aperture realm, there is a huge difference in the prowess of a Leaving Aperture realm cultivator for each increment in the cultivation stage. As long as the mastermind wields strength exceeding Leaving Aperture realm primary stage, we will have no way of dealing with him. Wu Shi frowned. In leaving Aperture Realm, a cultivator would be able to draw their primordial spirit out of their body and directly manipulate the energy in their surroundings to aid them in battle. Every increment in the cultivation stage would call forth a lightning ordeal, and as long as the cultivator survived it, it would temper their primordial spirit and significantly enhance their control over their surroundings. Due to that, there was a vast difference in the fighting prowess of leaving Aperture Realm cultivators of differing cultivation stages. For example, even though it might appear that there was only a small cultivation stage difference between leaving Aperture Realm Primary Stage and leaving Aperture Realm Intermediate, a dozen leaving Aperture Realm Primary Stage cultivators might not have even been a match for a single leaving Aperture Realm Intermediate Stage cultivator. As such, even if the mastermind was still within the leaving Aperture Realm, if their cultivation had already reached leaving Aperture Realm Pinnacle, there was no person or any power in Qingyuan Empire that would be able to stand against the mastermind. I understand that as well, but I don't have a clear gauge on the mastermind's exact power at the moment. Alright, let's put this matter aside for now. There are more important matters for us to attend to. Zhong Xian turned his gaze toward the corpses on the ground and said, "Aren't you curious about how the mastermind managed to kill these 8 7-star master teachers discreetly? How? That night, when I was assaulted by the Qingtian Emperor, I happened to learn of the secret behind their soul-nabbing secret art. They utilize a medium to infiltrate the consciousness of a cultivator and take their soul away. This medium could be anything, such as an altar or even a soul fragment. So, one aspect that we should explore is what medium the mastermind used to kill these 8 men. Did you find anything during your investigation of the case?" Zhong Xian asked. In close proximity, Vicious could nab the soul of anyone easily. However, over tens of thousands of li, he would have to rely on a medium to channel his soul energy. Like the altar that he had found beneath Chen Zhe's residence a while back. However, the altar should have been taken away by Wu Shi and sealed. So, how did Vicious manage to kill these 8 master teachers? Wu Shi was taken aback for a moment before replying. I haven't been paying much notice to this matter. Try to look into it. It could very well lead us to some clues, Zhong Xian instructed before falling silent. Activating his eye of insight, he began examining the corpses before him carefully. Pavilion Master Go had a horrified expression on his face, as if he had encountered something he dared not believe before his death. After a moment of examination, Zhong Xian shook his head and sighed. The physical state of Pavilion Master Go was identical to that of Chen Zhe back then. Even through his eye of insight, he did not notice anything peculiar. At this moment, Zhong Xian suddenly recalled a crucial figure in this matter, and he hurriedly asked, "Wait, where is King Zhongqing? Where is he imprisoned? I dispatched my men to have him arrested once more, and he was locked in the prison of the Master Teacher Pavilion. Last night, Emperor Chu Tianxing came to pay me a visit, presumably over the matter concerning King Zhongqing, but I turned him down," Wu Shi replied. "Emperor Chu Tianxing came to pay you a visit?" Zhong Xian frowned. King Zhongqing was only a mere subordinate of the Qingyuan royal family. It was not as if he was Emperor Chu Tianxing's son or anything, so why was Emperor Chu Tianxing so desperate to protect him, coming over whenever something happened, willing to pay a hefty price for his release even? That's right. However, I did not allow the two of them to meet. Furthermore, we have a legitimate reason to have King Zhongqing imprisoned this time around, so I don't think that Emperor Chu Tianxing will be able to do anything about the matter for the time being, Wu Shi replied. I see. However, there's really something amiss about Emperor Chu Tianxing. I think we have to look into him, Zhong Xian said grimly. Based on the Qingtian Emperor's memory, Zhong Xian was able to confirm that King Zhongqing had indeed defected to the otherworldly demonic tribe. Considering how close Emperor Chu Tianxing was to King Zhongqing, it was a little hard to believe that there would be nothing wrong with him as well. Should I have him captured and interrogated? Wu Shi also had the same suspicions, but due to Emperor Chu Tianxing's position, he had been a little hesitant to make a move. We shouldn't rush into this matter. It would surely cause a huge uproar if we made a move against Emperor Chu Tianxing, so we have to amply prepare. What's more urgent right now is finding the medium that the mastermind is using to conduct the killings. After that, we should focus our efforts on getting rid of the mastermind. Zhongxian contemplated in silence for a moment before sharing his analysis. Only when the mastermind is dead will everyone be safe. That's true. Wu Shi nodded. Zhongxian was right. In a sense, an emperor could be said to be the very heart of an empire. Thus, if anything happened to the emperor, it could easily induce pandemonium among the populace of the empire. And the pandemonium was only one small aspect of the matter. If the master-teacher pavilion failed to deal with the problem properly, they could risk losing their credibility. Considering how the master-teacher pavilion was in charge of maintaining order within the region, if they wished to deal with the royal family, they would need to have concrete, irrefutable evidence. Otherwise, what would the other empires make of the matter? Wouldn't they feel that their sovereignty was threatened by the presence of the master-teacher pavilion as well? As such, no matter how confident they were of their speculations, it was far from enough. Wu Shi nodded. I'll have my men look into the matter this instant. Aside from that, I might also need you to organize a group of men for an expedition to the marshlands of the Northern Meadows. An expedition to the marshlands of the Northern Meadows? Wu Shi frowned. That's right. I suspect that the mastermind is hiding there, Zhongxian explained. I see. All right, I'll pick out the elites of the master-teacher pavilion and liaise with the combat master hall to dispatch some of their experts as well, Wu Shi said. All right then, I'll be taking my leave first to make some preparations myself, Zhongxian replied. Farewell. There were two things he had to do before heading to the marshlands of the Northern Meadows. Firstly, he needed to try to raise the strength of the Golden Origin Cauldron another level, preferably to the leaving aperture realm. Secondly, he would have to urge Vicious to quickly devour the Qingtian Emperor's soul and clear his leaving aperture realm ordeal. Only with these would he have sufficient cards to deal with the other Vicious. Otherwise, considering his current cultivation, he would not stand a chance if he headed over there recklessly. If things went wrong, he might even end up as the other party's nourishment. Chapter 1204 The Blacksmith Guild. Knowing that it would be a bitter fight against the Vicious in the marshlands of the Northern Meadows, Zhongxian did not dare hesitate. After leaving the Master-Teacher Pavilion, he headed straight to the Blacksmith Guild. Logically speaking, Vicious had already lain low for many years, so he should not have taken such brazen actions at this juncture, especially given the fact that he would risk bringing the wrath of the Master-Teacher Pavilion headquarters on him. However, it seemed like the death of the Qingtian Emperor and the emergence of a celestial Master-Teacher had really heaped a great amount of pressure on him, forcing him to show his hand. Without a doubt, the first person that the other Vicious would go for once he was freed of his bindings would be him, Zhongxian. Thus, he would be better off taking the initiative and making the first move instead of waiting for the enemy to arrive at his doorstep. Not only would it be safer for him, more importantly, it would also limit the casualties among the master teachers. The Golden Origin Cauldron is currently at half-leaving aperture realm. If I fuse the black gold crystal ore into the Golden Origin Cauldron, I should be able to raise its tier significantly. Even if I'm unable to bring it up to the level of a Saint high-tier artifact, I should have no trouble raising its cultivation to the leaving aperture realm. Zhongxian hypothesized as he made his way forward. He had obtained the black gold crystal ore from the treasure Wu Yangzi had left behind in his old residence. After splitting a portion of it with Luo Chichi, he still had a slice of it left. It was just that he had been too busy recently, and he had not found the required materials to perfectly fuse it into the Golden Origin Cauldron. Since he had already decided to set off to the marshlands of the Northern Meadows, he would really have to equip himself well in advance. The Blacksmith Guild was roughly 10 li away from the Master-Teacher Pavilion, so it did not take too long for him to arrive at his destination. Zhongxian had not challenged the 7-star blacksmith examination ever since clearing the 6-star examination back at the Hongyuan Master-Teacher Academy, so he was still a 6-star blacksmith. He took out his 6-star blacksmith emblem and pinned it on his chest before walking in. The Qingyuan Empire Blacksmith Guild was extremely crowded, just like the other guilds in the city. Every day, countless cultivators would pay the guild a visit to browse through their array of weapons to select one that was handy for them. Only Saint low-tier weapons were on display in the public section. If a cultivator wanted a Saint intermediate tier weapon, they would have to fork out a hefty sum and make a personal request to a 7-star blacksmith personally, provided that the 7-star blacksmith was able to successfully smith one. Zhongshe, is it really you? Just as Zhong Xian was about to ask at the receptionist where the head of the blacksmith guild was, he suddenly heard an exclamation amid the crowd. Turning around, he saw Chu Xiong, whom he had met at the Terpsichore guild a while back, waving at his hands excitedly. Chu Gongzi. Zhong Xian greeted with a smile. It was thanks to the other party that he had been able to enter the spring pavilion back then and successfully obtain his 7-star Terpsichore emblem. Zhongshe, it's really a delight to meet you here. I have been wanting to thank you for your help back then. It's due to your words that I have managed to recover fully from the wounds on my soul. Chu Xiong bowed deeply as he spoke. Back at the Terpsichore guild, it was due to Zhongshe's words that Fairy Zi Yang did her best for him during the exclusive dance, thus allowing him to recover fully from his wounds. It's not a big issue, there's no need to stand on ceremony. Zhong Xian quickly helped Chu Xiong up. He had just offered a word on behalf of Chu Xiong, so it was really nothing much. Just that, he could not help but feel his heart bleed whenever he thought about the concentrated high-tier spirit stone the other party had spent on the exclusive dance. If Chu Xiong had allowed him to dance for him instead, he would have surely recovered way faster. I heard about Zhongshe's crashing of the Master-Teacher Pavilion, and I honestly have nothing left but reverence for you. Chu Xiong looked at Zhong Xian with eyes twinkling with admiration. It's really nothing much. I only crashed it on a whim. Zhong Xian shook his head. He had simply caused too great of a commotion during his pavilion crashing. For one, his declaration had resounded throughout the whole of Qingyuan City, so it would only have taken a little bit of investigating for Chu Xiong to make the link between him and the pavilion crashing. You only crashed it on a whim? Chu Xiong rolled his eyes. The Qingyuan Empire Master-Teacher Pavilion has stood proudly on the Master-Teacher continent for many years without any issue, and yet, you ended up crashing it just days after your arrival, leaving Pavilion Master Go with no choice but to step down. If this was done on a whim, wouldn't the entire Master-Teacher Pavilion be completely eradicated as long as you made plans beforehand? A thought suddenly came to Chu Xiong's mind, and he looked at Zhong Xian doubtfully. It can't be that Zhongshe has an issue with the Blacksmith Guild, so you have come here to crash it today as well? Based on what he had found, it seemed like Zhongshe had not allowed Qingyuan City to have a single day of peace ever since his arrival. First was the enchantment of the Spirit Awakener Guild's building, and after that, he crashed the Master-Teacher Pavilion. For him to suddenly pay a visit to the Blacksmith Guild, it could not be that he was up to something, could it? Cough cough. Not expecting Chu Xiong to have such a horrendous impression of someone as honorable and upright as him, Zhong Xian choked. With a slightly awkward tone, he asked, how could someone as humble as me possibly do something of that sort? You are really thinking too much. Humble? Chu Xiong's lips twitched wildly. He had seen plenty of humble people in his lifetime, but this was the first time he was seeing someone that humble. Since you aren't here to crash the Blacksmith Guild, you must be here to watch Master Lin Jie's smithing then? Master Lin Jie? Yes. Master Lin Jie is a half 8-star blacksmith from the Chenchong Empire. He happened to be passing by the area, so guild leader Qin specially invited him over to conduct a public lecture for the 7-star blacksmiths of Qingyuan City. I was honored to have received an invitation letter for this occasion as well. Chu Xiong explained. You are a 7-star blacksmith? Considering how the young man before him was a regular at the Spring Pavilion, Zhong Xian had automatically assumed that he was a profligate scion. Who would have thought that he was actually a 7-star blacksmith? Of course, I might seem nothing much, but my talent in smithing is unquestionable. Chu Xiong boasted gleefully. Zhongshe, if you face any problems in smithing, feel free to ask me. Given our relationship, I'll do my best to answer any queries that you have. Thank you, I will definitely find you if I have any questions in mind. Knowing that the other party was saying those words out of goodwill, Zhong Xian replied with a kind smile. Right, I happen to have something that I need your help on at the moment. Can you bring me to meet the head of the Blacksmith Guild? You want to meet Guild Leader Qin? No problem, leave it to me, Chu Xiong replied confidently as he led the way forward. Follow me. Zhongxian nodded. With someone to bring him around, he would be spared from much trouble. From Chu Xiong's introduction, Zhongxian came to learn that the name of the head of the blacksmith guild was Qin Chong, and he was a 7-star pinnacle blacksmith. It did not take long for them to arrive at the guild leader office. After reporting their presence, the duo made their way in. Guild leader Chong, this young man over here is 7-star master teacher Zhongxian, the individual who successfully crashed the master teacher pavilion a few days back. Chu Xiong introduced. I see. It's an honor to meet you, Zhongshe. Guild leader Qin quickly got to his feet and bowed. A master teacher who could successfully crash a master teacher pavilion was indubitably an extremely talented individual who was bound for great things in the future. Even as the head of the Qingyuan Empire Blacksmith Guild, he knew that the other party was not someone whom he could underestimate. Zhongxian clasped his fist and responded, Guild leader Qin, you are too polite. Swiftly getting into their seats, they traded a few pleasantries to get acquainted with one another before guild leader Qin asked with a worried expression on his face, Zhongshe, may I know the reason behind your arrival? Our blacksmith guild has been abiding by the law all this while, and I have maintained a tight watch over every single one of the subordinates, so. Knowing that guild leader Qin was thinking about, Chu Xiong slapped his hand on his forehead before clarifying, Guild leader Qin, Zhongshe isn't here to crash the blacksmith guild. Ah, that's a relief. Guild leader Qin heaved a long sigh of relief, and the tension that had been on his face ever since Zhongxian was introduced to him finally alleviated. On the other hand, hearing the conversation between the duo, Zhongxian was rendered speechless. All he had done was crash the master teacher pavilion. Did they really think that he was a god of destruction, destroying everything in his path wherever he went? He was really a humbler person. A really, really humble person. Why wouldn't anyone believe him? To be honest with you, I really do have a few things that I'll have to trouble guild leader Qin with. Knowing that it would be futile even if he explained himself, Zhongxian shook his head helplessly and got straight to business. I have a Saint intermediate tier artifact that I would like to fuse some black gold crystal ore into. May I know if you have any time to help me in the forging process? Hearing Zhongxian's request, Guild leader Qin was visibly taken aback for a moment before asking, may I ask what kind of weapon your Saint intermediate tier artifact is? Does it have any spirit? Also, what's its current cultivation realm? It's a half-leaving aperture realm weapon cauldron, and it does have a spirit, Zhongxian replied. This. A frown emerged on guild leader Qin's face. Zhongshe, I'll be frank with you here. If your weapon cauldron was only at primordial spirit realm primary stage, I might still have been able to help you reforge it and fuse it with your black gold crystal ore, but half-leaving aperture realm. I haven't even reached that level of cultivation realm yet, so I fear that your request is beyond my ability. If that's what you are worrying about, there's really no need to. I'll be giving you some guidance from the side during the forging process, and as long as you follow my instructions strictly, there won't be any problems, Zhongxian replied. No matter what, he was determined to overlook the Golden Origin Cauldron's forging personally. Otherwise, no matter who did the job, he would not be able to put his mind at ease. You will be giving guidance. Guild leader Qin was taken aback. Zhongshe is a blacksmith. I studied it for a while in the past. I am currently a 6-star blacksmith, Zhongxian replied. He had collected all the books concerning smithing in the Master Teacher Pavilion and read the compiled 7-star Heaven's Path Smith Art too, thus raising his understanding on smithing to 7-star pinnacle, which was comparable to most 8-star primary blacksmiths. However, it was just that he never had time to practice forging before, so with his current proficiency, he could only make metal blocks at the very most. Fearing that he would end up misshaping the Golden Origin Cauldron, he had sought Guild leader Qin's help instead. 6-star blacksmith. Guild leader Qin and Chu Xiong exchanged a glance as frowns emerged on their faces. There was a huge gap between a 6-star blacksmith and a 7-star blacksmith. For a 6-star blacksmith to actually speak of guiding a 7-star blacksmith like Guild leader Qin. Was this a joke? Noticing the peculiar gaze in the duo's eyes, Zhongxian realized what was going through their minds, and he swiftly clarified, actually, my proficiency in smithing has already reached 7-star. It's just that I have been too busy recently, so I haven't been able to find time to take the examination. I see. Guild leader Qin nodded in comprehension. Since that's the case, allow me to invite Zhongshe to follow me to our forging hall. Only the earth flames there will be able to produce sufficient heat to melt a Saint intermediate tier artifact and the black gold crystal or sure. Zhongshen nodded. Most blacksmith guilds tapped into the earth flames underground for their smithing. There were differing tiers to earth flames as well, and the black gold crystal ore was known to be exceptionally difficult to process, while the golden origin cauldron had reached half-leaving aperture realm and had been tempered by lightning, so ordinary earth flames would not do the job. The trio swiftly arrived at the forging hall, only to meet with a huge crowd. Astonishingly, every single one of them had 7 stars on the emblem pinned conspicuously on their chests. They were all 7-star blacksmith. This. Zhongshen frowned. He had thought that the forging hall would be empty. If that were the case, he would have been able to go all out in the reforging of the golden origin cauldron. But with just a swift glance, he could see at least several hundred 7-star blacksmiths in the room. Noticing Zhongshen's unhappiness, guild leader Qin quickly explained, "Zhongshe, pardon me. Only the flames of the forging hall are sufficient to process the black gold crystal ore, and it just so happens that Master Lin Jie will be conducting a lecture on smithing for us today. If Zhongshe is willing to wait, why don't you listen to Master Lin's lecture first? He's a half 8-star blacksmith, so his understanding of smithing is bound to have reached an unfathomable level. Through his teachings, your grasp of smithing could improve by leaps and bounds." "I fear that I don't have that much time to spare," Zhongshen replied with a frown. Vicious could make another move at any moment, so he had to quickly raise the prowess of the golden origin cauldron so that he would be prepared to face him. Thus, he really had no time to spare on a lecture. Right after Zhongshen said those words, a displeased voice suddenly sounded from the center of the room. "Do you mean to say that listening to my lecture is a waste of your time?" Chapter 1205. Master Lin Jie. Turning around, Zhongshen saw an elder with a flowing white beard walking over. There was an air of valiance surrounding him, and astonishingly, his cultivation was indiscernible on first glance. "Master Lin Jie." Guild leader Qin hurriedly clasped his fist and greeted the elder, whereas Chuseong lowered his head respectfully. Be it in terms of cultivation or comprehension of smithing, they came nowhere close to matching up to the half 8-star blacksmith before them. "Master Lin Jie, allow me to introduce you. He is a 7-star pinnacle master teacher, Zhongshe." Fearing that the duo would end up fighting one another, guild leader Qin hurriedly introduced the two of them. Considering how Zhongshen had successfully crashed the Qingyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion, even defeating Pavilion Master Go in the midst of doing so, there was definitely nothing wrong with addressing him as a 7-star Pinnacle Master Teacher. 7-star Pinnacle Master Teacher? Master Lin Jie was taken aback for a moment. "For one as young as you to wield such power, I see that you do have the right to act conceited." Initially, Master Lin Jie had thought that it was some arrogant individual trying to humiliate him publicly, but since the young man was a 7-star Pinnacle Master Teacher, it was unlikely that he would lower himself to something as crass as that. Zhongshen clasped his fist and requested, "Pardon me, but I have some urgent issues concerning the Master Teacher Pavilion that cannot be delayed. May I ask you to lend me the forging hall for a while so that I can upgrade my artifact?" Considering that Master Lin Jie had specially been invited there by guild leader Qin to conduct a lecture, it was indeed a little disrespectful for him to suddenly barge in and request to use the earth flames. "Upgrade your artifact? Is Zhongshe a blacksmith as well?" Master Lin Jie asked curiously. "I have learned it for a while and happened to obtain a 6-star emblem," Zhongshen replied. Master Lin Jie nodded in response. "May I know what kind of artifact Zhongshe hopes to upgrade?" While the Qingyuan Empire Blacksmith Guild was not as grand as the Qianchong Empires, there were at least 600 to 700 private chambers where one could access earth flames. Just what kind of artifact was the young man dealing with that he would absolutely need to use the forging hall? If the other party was a 7-star Pinnacle blacksmith, he would not have bothered to ask that question. Just that, the young man's proficiency in smithing seemed to be a little low, and the earth flames in the forging hall were exceptionally wild. The slightest lapse in control would not only result in the failure of the tempering, the artifact could possibly be destroyed as well. It's this one. Zhongxian flicked his wrist, and the golden origin cauldron appeared in the room. Master, are you intending to reforge me? Ha ha ha, am I going to be upgraded once more? Scanning its surroundings, the golden origin cauldron found that there were many blacksmiths around him. He swiftly realized that he was standing in the middle of a blacksmith guild, and he could not help but tremble in excitement. A half-leaving Aperture Realm Saint Intermediate Tier artifact. Master Lin Jie had thought that it would only be a half-saint artifact or that sort, but to think that it would be a Saint Intermediate Tier artifact. Master Lin Jie's eyebrows shot up in disbelief as he asked hesitantly, Zhongshe, are you certain that this is the artifact that you wish to upgrade? That's right. Zhongxian nodded. This. Attributing it to the young man's inexperience, Master Lin Jie could not help but advise him. To forge a Saint Intermediate Tier artifact, on top of wielding sufficient strength, more importantly, one must possess a deep understanding of smithing so as to ensure that the forging and upgrading do not damage the spirit within the artifact. Otherwise, not only will the artifact not be upgraded, its tier might even decline sharply instead. Even a half 8-star blacksmith like him only had a 20% chance of successfully upgrading a Saint Intermediate artifact like that, so for a 6-star blacksmith to do so, he was certain that the Saint Intermediate Tier artifact would be ruined during the upgrade. It was truly not worth the risk. Before Zhongxian could even speak, the golden origin cauldron had already harumphed in discontent. Old man, what do you mean by those words? My master was able to raise my tier from Saint Low Tier to Saint Intermediate Tier just by giving pointers to an apprentice blacksmith, so do you think that he needs you to lecture him? Ever since its creation, its current master was the only one that it had felt so much respect and awe for, and yet, that old man actually dared to doubt its master's capability. Count yourself lucky that I didn't charge forward to crush your puny head with my butt. By giving pointers to an apprentice blacksmith. The crowd was taken aback by the golden origin cauldron's words. One must know that an apprentice blacksmith was an individual who had yet to successfully smith a mortal low-tier weapon, and such a person was able to upgrade a Saint Low-Tier artifact to Saint Intermediate Tier just by receiving some pointers from the young man before them. Zhongxian slapped the golden origin cauldron's lid and berated, "No one will think of you as a mute if you don't speak." The only reason Song Zhan had been able to successfully raise the tier of the golden origin cauldron was because he was actually highly talented in smithing himself, and he had devoted many years of his life to diligently refining his forging techniques on top of that. This had granted him a deep understanding of most common types of forging techniques. Furthermore, he also wielded a cultivation of transcendent mortal 9 Dan, which was on par with a 6-star blacksmith. These were the factors that had led to the eventual success in the upgrade, and this success could not possibly be replicated with any other apprentice blacksmiths. It was just a work of coincidence, there was nothing in it to brag about. The golden origin cauldron shook its body indignantly. But what I am saying is the truth. You did manage to get an apprentice blacksmith to successfully raise my tier just by offering him some pointers. Seeing that the golden origin cauldron was still arguing with him, Zhongxian's eyebrows shot up. Shut up and wait by the side. All right. Seeing that its master was really angry, the golden origin cauldron meekly retreated to the side. Zhongxian turned to the crowd and said in embarrassment, "That fellow has been a lofty position for too long, so he rarely thinks before he speaks. As such, his words tend to be a little impolite and disrespectful. Allow me to apologize on his behalf. It was insolent for an artifact to suddenly interject in the midst of its master's conversation. It's fine, don't worry about it," Master Lin Jie replied with a wave of his hand. With intrigue in his eyes, he asked, "Previously, your artifact has said that you gave pointers to an apprentice blacksmith, allowing him to successfully upgrade the golden origin cauldron. May I know if that's true? It's actually nothing much. It's truly not worth speaking about." Zhongxian waved his hand. He was only there to upgrade the golden origin cauldron. It had never been his intention to create a ruckus, so there was no point speaking of past affairs. "Pardon me, it seems like I was a little reckless." Master Lin Jie thought that Zhongxian was reluctant to speak of the matter because there was some secret tied into it, so he chose not to probe any further. All right, if you don't mind, I'll start upgrading my artifact now. Seeing that he did not cause any sort of misunderstanding, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. He paused for a brief moment before turning to Chu Xiong. Chu Gongzi, I might need to trouble you later on. Zhongshe, feel free to make any request of me. As long as it's within my means, I'll accomplish it to the best of my abilities. Chu Xiong replied with a smile. Putting aside that they were acquaintances, just the fact that the young man before him had successfully crashed the Master Teacher Pavilion, making him the bona fide #1 Master Teacher of the Qingyuan Empire, made him a person who was worth befriending. It's like this. I really dote on my Golden Origin Cauldron a lot, and I fear that I'll hesitate during a critical step of the upgrade. Thus, I would like to invite you to upgrade it on my behalf. Zhongxian said. Dote. Hearing those words, the Golden Origin Cauldron racked his mind, but he could not think of a single instance where his master had doted on him. In fact, it seemed like his master had even just slapped him just a moment ago. Hearing that Zhongxian wanted him to upgrade his artifact, a bitter smile surfaced on Chu Xiong's face as he hurriedly waved his hand. Zhongshe, it's not that I don't want to help you, but my cultivation hasn't even reached primordial spirit realm yet. Even though I am a 7-star blacksmith, it's still far beyond my current abilities to upgrade a half-leaving aperture realm artifact. Even a 7-star pinnacle blacksmith like guild leader Qin was not confident in handling artifacts of such a tier, so how could a newly promoted 7-star blacksmith like him possibly stand a chance? The other party was really thinking too highly of him. There's no need to be nervous. I'll guide you from the side. As long as you follow my instructions strictly, you will be fine, Zhongxian said. However, Chu Xiong was still conflicted. Zhongshe, I really don't think that I'm up to the task. Your artifact is truly valuable, and it'll be a disaster if I make a mistake in the smithing process. Don't worry about it. I'll be using the impartation of Heaven's will on you later on, so you need not worry about making a mistake. If something really crops up, I won't blame you for that, Zhongxian replied. Since the other party had already said this, it seemed like he did not have any reason to turn the offer down anymore. Thus, after a moment of hesitation, Chu Xiong eventually nodded in agreement. All right, let's begin then. Zhongxian turned to the Golden Origin Cauldron and frowned. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and go over to the earth flames. The Golden Origin Cauldron pouted in indignation, but it still hurriedly flew over to the earth flames. This is called doting. Black lines streaked across Master Lin Jie and guild leader Qin's faces. It was just a moment ago that the other party had said that he feared that he would hesitate in the upgrading process because his heart might suddenly soften for his artifact, just like how a doctor would find it hard to be decisive when conducting a surgery on their kin. But those harsh words. Do you know what doting means? Walking up to the formation to draw up the earth flames, Zhongxian gestured to Chu Xiong. The latter swiftly understood Zhongxian's intention and walked forward. Zhongshe, this is the token to draw out the earth flames. Guild leader Qin flicked his wrist and proffered a token. Due to safety considerations, the formation to draw the earth flames could only be activated with a certain token. However, before he could pass it to the other party, the young man had already begun speaking. Take 3 steps to the left, 2 steps forward. No, take 1 small step back, and shuffle a little to the right. Good. Drive your zhunqi and channel it into your right leg before stomping down. The voice carried a unique melody to it that seemed to place one in a trance. Without any hesitation, Chu Xiong followed Zhongxian's orders strictly and stomped hard on the ground. Whoosh! In an instant, the formation for drawing the earth flames suddenly whirred into action, and a powerful surge of flames burst up, shrouding the Golden Origin Cauldron. Guild leader Qin narrowed his eyes in disbelief. To activate the earth flames without using the token, how is that possible? The temperature of the earth flames was exceptionally high, such that even Saint Fordan cultivators could easily be reduced to cinder in a moment of carelessness. As such, the formation was firmly sealed to prevent any flames from leaking out when it was not in use, and without the required token, it was impossible to remove the seal and trigger the formation. Yet, with Zhongshen's guidance, Chu Xiong had actually managed to pull it off with ease. Despite witnessing it with his own eyes, he still found it hard to believe. Only one who possesses a deep understanding of formations is capable of pulling this off. Most likely, Zhongshe has achieved exceptional proficiency in the field of formations as well, Master Lin Jie remarked in approval. To be able to see through the structure of the earth flame formation with a glance and successfully activate it, the young man's comprehension of formations could be said to be top-notch even among the formation masters in their Qianchong Empire, as expected of Zhongshe. Guild leader Qin nodded. Master Lin Jie shook his head. I'm more interested in his smithing ability. In the first place, upgrading a Saint intermediate tier artifact is already an incredibly difficult task. To make matters worse, he is even using another person as a proxy to smith in his stead. Even if he uses the impartation of Heaven's will, considering that he has never worked with his partner before, the difficulty is bound to be countless times greater. Honestly speaking, I am not too optimistic about the outcome. It was one thing if Zhongshen and his partner had worked with one another on numerous occasions, allowing them to work synergistically with one another. There were indeed such cases in the real world as well, where a more knowledgeable blacksmith would offer pointers to a more skilled blacksmith in order to create a weapon more powerful than what they could create individually. But that would take years of cooperation in order for both parties to understand each other's strength, zhenqi purity, forging techniques, smithing tendencies, and so on. And that clearly was not the case between Zhongshen and his partner. To work on a Saint intermediate tier on their very first partnership, when they knew next to nothing about one another. As a half 8-star blacksmith, his experience told him that such a thing was impossible to pull off. If it was truly possible, he would have spent his years smithing in vain. As a 7-star pinnacle master teacher, Zhongshen should have been aware of this matter as well. Yet, to go on with it despite understanding the risks, was he banking on the occurrence of a miracle, or was the Saint intermediate tier artifact disposable to him? At this point, Master Lin Jie could not help but shoot a look of sympathy at the golden origin cauldron. Doting? More like murder. Chapter 1206 Chu Xiong Smiths. Seeing how Chu Xiong had scared himself silly from activating the earth flames, Zhongshen frowned. He quickly spoke to jolt the other party out of his daze. All right. Prepare yourself, we will be starting soon. Yes. Chu Xiong replied. To be able to reach Saint 3 Dan and achieve the proficiency of a 7-star blacksmith at such a young age, while Chu Xiong might have appeared like a profligate scion on the surface, he was definitely not as simple as he seemed. Taking a deep breath, it did not take him long to calm his mind. Seeing how jittery Chu Xiong was, the Golden Origin Cauldron laughed heartily and consoled, Lad, rest assured. It's not that I want to brag, but as long as you follow the instruction of my master word for word, Grandpa Ding will be completely fine. Perhaps, I might even be upgraded by a tier. It appeared that it was not worried in the least. On the other hand, upon hearing those words, Master Lin Jie and Guild leader Qin could not help but share a look, and they could see the worry in each other's eyes. Are you really that gutsy? Or is there something wrong with your head? If something goes wrong in the upgrading process, dropping a tier will be the least of your worries. More importantly, your spirit might even be completely destroyed as a result. Are you sure that you don't need to worry about this at all? Yes, sir. Chu Xiong replied tensely before turning to Zhongshen. Zhongshe, may I have the ore that I have to fuse into the Golden Origin Cauldron? Here you go. Zhongshen flicked his wrist, and an ore flew into Chu Xiong's grasp. This. Seeing the ore that was being passed over, Master Lin Jie's eyes narrowed in astonishment. Isn't that the black gold crystal ore? The black gold crystal ore was an incredibly valuable and rare ore. Just fusing a pinch of it into the weapon could potentially raise the prowess of the smithed weapon significantly. It was highly sought after, even among the top conferred Empire blacksmiths. Who would have thought that the young man actually had such a thing in his possession? A moment later, Master Lin Jie frowned as he analyzed the situation. But it will be difficult to fuse that with the cauldron. As rare as black gold crystal ore was, as a half 8-star blacksmith, he still had various channels that he could acquire some from. What truly stumped most blacksmiths was not the rarity of the ore but the sheer difficulty in processing it. Even with the earth flames in the forging hall, it would still be extremely difficult to melt the black gold crystal ore. If the black gold crystal ore was not fully melted, it would be impossible to fuse it with the golden origin cauldron perfectly. If only we were in the Qianchong Empire Blacksmith Guild, the earth flames there would have no problem melting the black gold crystal ore, although it would take a great deal of effort. However, here, Master Lin Jie shook his head pessimistically. The earth flames in the forging hall boasted the highest temperature in the Qingyuan Empire, but they were still lacking compared to the earth flames in the Qianchong Empire Blacksmith Guild. It really would not be easy to melt the black gold crystal ore here. Staring curiously to see what Zhongxian would do in this situation, Master Lin Jie suddenly heard the young man issuing an instruction, and right afterwards, the golden origin cauldron opened its lid and swallowed the ore. While the crowd blinked blankly at the sight, Master Lin Jie slapped his thigh with an excited gleam in his eyes. How did I not think of that? The cauldron that is to be upgraded is a weapon cauldron itself. While the temperature of the earth flames is limited, the superior heat conductivity of the weapon cauldron can channel the heat through it, thus raising the temperature another notch. With this, there should be no problem melting the black gold crystal ore. Just that. Just what? While the black gold crystal ore can be melted through this method, the problem is that he will be unable to view the current state of the black gold crystal ore to determine whether it has fully melted or not, Master Lin Jie replied. Due to the firm exterior of the weapon cauldron and the intense flames, it will be impossible to extend his spiritual perception into the cauldron as well. If the black gold crystal ore is retrieved too early, it will not have melted properly. If retrieved too late, its properties could very well have been destroyed by the heat. Either way, it will adversely affect the result of the upgrading. Considering how the intense flames harnessed within the cauldron were able to melt even the black gold crystal ore, if one were to extend one's spiritual perception into it, one's consciousness would surely be seared by the heat. If one could not view what was going on in the cauldron, it would be impossible to accurately discern when the black gold crystal ore needed to be retrieved to move on to the next step. The black gold crystal ore was a particularly sensitive ore. Exposing it to high heat for a second or two too long could potentially lead to the failure of the smithing. Guild leader Qin also swiftly understood the implications of the decided course of action. Indeed. Not only so, the cauldron will also have to be constantly placed in the intense heat of the earth flames. If the timing is not right, not only will the black gold crystal ore be ruined, there is also a good chance that the internal structure of the golden origin cauldron from the previous smithing will also become undone, resulting in a sharp decline in its tier. In the first place, the golden origin cauldron was made of an alloy consisting of different metals. It truly was not easy to establish a balance among all of the metals and stabilize it at Saint intermediate tier. However, if it were exposed to intense heat for a prolonged period, the balance could very well be shattered. In other words, while melting the black gold crystal ore within the golden origin cauldron did resolve the problem of lacking heat, it produced several other problems, thus raising the difficulty of the forging process another level. While the duo was still worrying over the forging, the young man's voice suddenly sounded once more. Take 2 steps forward and fuse your zhenqi into the earth flames at a northeast trajectory. After which, use the 3 leaves forging technique to pry open the cauldron lid. The voice carried the unique melody of the impartation of heaven's will, compelling Chu Xiong to obey it without any hesitation. As such, he immediately followed the orders faithfully, taking 2 steps forward and flicking his finger. Voila! The cauldron lid was pried open, and a viscous, golden liquid flew out from the golden origin cauldron. The black gold crystal ore has melted. Furthermore, from the looks of it, it seems like it has just melted. The error in timing is definitely less than 1/10 of a breath. Guild leader Qin narrowed his eyes in disbelief. To be able to grasp the timing perfectly despite being unable to peer into the situation within the golden origin cauldron. How in the world did the young man manage to pull it off? Master Lin Jie pondered over the earlier situation and swiftly made a deduction. It's because of the commands he issued. He instructed his partner to take 2 steps forward and fuse his zhenqi at a northeast trajectory. That step served to swiftly intensify the heat within the cauldron. After which, he instructed his partner to utilize the 3 leaves forging technique. As you know, the 3 leaves forging technique is an extremely forceful method that consists of incredibly swift and precise movements of one's fingers, allowing one to compress the flames together, thus focusing all the heat at a single point, resulting in a sharp rise in the temperature. It's through this method that he was able to melt the black gold crystal ore instantaneously and retrieve it timely from the cauldron. But pulling this off would require extremely precise calculations. Just how fast does his mind run? Fearsome. He could not help but clench his fists tightly in agitation. It appeared to just be a simple command, but there was actually a profound logic behind it that required deep understanding of the earth flame formation, the temperature of the earth flames, the melting point of the black gold crystal ore, the attribute of Chuseong's Zhenqi, and many other factors. Only with such precise calculations would one be able to pull it off without accidentally destroying the black gold crystal ore. Even a half 8-star blacksmith like Master Lin Jie would be unable to accomplish something like that. The other party's mental calculation ability was truly fearsome. Side shift 3 kun to the left before lifting your hammer to strike the opening of the golden origin cauldron. Use the descending willow leaves forging technique and strike a total of 148 times at a rate of once every 3 breaths, no more, no less. After which, Zhongxian continued issuing instructions. Soon, a rhythmic ding-ding-dang-dang began resounding in the forging hall. Marvelous! Truly marvelous! Master Lin Jie suddenly exclaimed in delirium. Master Lin Jie! Guild leader Qin could not understand the other party's abrupt, fevered outburst. As a 7-star pinnacle blacksmith, it's perfectly normal for you to be unable to see through the exquisiteness of their forging, Master Lin Jie explained with visible excitement in his tone. The descending willow leaves forging technique is a perfectly ordinary forging technique, essentially consisting of slow but steady strikes. What is truly exquisite is how aptly it is used in this situation. Having just been exposed to intense heat, the cauldron is already starting to melt. If a fast and forceful forging technique were to be used in this situation, it could cause the internal structure of the cauldron to break apart. While it would not affect the formation of the cauldron, the small cracks here and there would adversely affect the durability of the cauldron, causing its tier to decline. On the other hand, through using the descending willow leaves forging technique, not only will such a problem be avoided, it will even further temper the current structure of the cauldron, making it more compact and firmer than before, thus enhancing its quality. The instructions issued by the young man were truly exquisite. Every single word he spoke seemed to directly point to the very essence of smithing, turning even the most ordinary movements into a profound art. Despite utilizing only the most basic forging techniques, he was still able to facilitate the fusion of the cauldron with the black gold crystal ore perfectly. Ding ding dang dang. By the time Chuseong performed his 148th strike on the golden origin cauldron, he happened to return to the starting point. After which, under Zhongxian's instructions, he flicked the hammer into the air and began striking the bottom of the cauldron. Why is he striking the bottom of the cauldron instead of the cauldron body? Guild leader Qin asked in confusion. Under normal circumstances, it would be best to hammer an artifact in sequence to further its stability, which in this case, would be from the top to the bottom. As such, it was perplexing why Zhongxian would instruct Chuseong to strike the bottom of the cauldron right after hammering the top. Logically speaking, he should have the body of the cauldron hammered first before moving to the bottom. This. Master Lin Jie frowned in bewilderment as well, unable to make sense of the situation either. Wong wong wong. In the midst of his confusion, the cauldron before him suddenly emitted a deep rumble, reminiscent of an ocean's waves. Could it be? Master Lin Jie's eyes suddenly widened in realization. I finally get it. Guild leader Qin hurriedly turned his gaze to Master Lin Jie. This is the tidal forging technique. It was created by an 8-star blacksmith after listening to the sound of the waves. By striking the bottom of the cauldron in a specific manner right after hammering the top, a unique resonance is produced within the cauldron via the strikes, allowing the black gold crystal ore to better fuse into the body of the cauldron without hammering it directly, thus reducing the potential damage the hammering could cause to its structure. More importantly, the wave-like jolts from the hammering temper the spirit within the cauldron as well, enhancing it further. Formidable. Truly formidable. How did he manage to think of something like this? The more Master Lin Jie spoke, the more astounded he was. At this point, he could not help but feel a little light within. The tidal forging technique was an obsolete forging technique, applicable only in very few circumstances. As such, he had never really used it before despite having heard of it. Yet, who would have thought that he would actually see it being perfectly applied here? There were many forging techniques in the world, some more profound than others. However, just because one forging technique was more profound than another did not necessarily mean that it would be better. What was more important was to use the forging technique more apt for the situation. For example, not only would the tidal forging technique preserve the integrity of the Golden Origin Cauldron's internal structure to the greatest degree, it would also temper its spirit. There were simply too many people in the world, and this was including blacksmiths as well, who thought that the stronger the physical structure of a weapon was, the stronger the weapon would be. They attempt to fuse all kinds of superior ores into their weapon, only to neglect the enhancement of its spirit. As a result, they would end up with a weak weapon spirit trying to drag a body far stronger than it along, and naturally, this was detrimental to the overall prowess of the weapon. The usage of the tidal forging technique at this crucial juncture solved this issue perfectly. This was truly killing two birds with one stone. Witnessing what he had previously thought to be impossible, he could not help but feel a little dreamy inside. To be able to think this far ahead while issuing instructions to another. Just how deep an understanding does he have of smithing? His years of experience in smithing told him that Zhong Xian and his partner were doomed to fail, but from the current looks of the situation, it seemed like they would really succeed. Just from this alone, it could be seen that the young man's comprehension of smithing was much, much deeper than his. In fact, they were not even on the same level. He continued watching the forging process, and his shock only served to deepen at every turn. Every instruction made by Zhong Xian was profound and precise, such that he could not find the slightest flaw or error in it. On top of that, he astonishingly realized that the young man had really taken everything into consideration, factoring in his partner's strength, Zhenqi attribute, level of mastery in smithing, and so on. He had still been able to comprehend what the young man was doing at the start, but as the forging process went on, he swiftly found that there were many aspects that were beyond his understanding. Perhaps he might have been able to make sense out of it if he were to ponder deeply over the process, but the young man was issuing instructions one after another at a rapid pace, using a myriad of forging techniques within just a few moments, granting him no time to think at all. After some time, a resounding echo suddenly sounded, and under Zhong Xian's instructions, Chu Xiong rapidly retreated several steps. Hong Long. Following which, an overwhelming aura burst into the air, and the sky abruptly darkened. It's the leaving aperture ordeal. Everyone stared at the sight before them with mouths agape. One kun is 3.33 centimeters. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.